The second phone was still warm when she found it. Brooke Adebayo believed she had the perfect marriage. She is black, 27, a beautiful aesthetic physician who built the Aurea Clinic from nothing. Wine-red silk dress, a thin gold chain at her throat. A life that looked flawless from the outside. Her husband is Yoon Jae-hyun. They call him the Quiet One. A black serpent tattoo climbs the left side of his neck, disappearing behind his ear. Charcoal suits, an onyx watch. A man who never raises his voice, because he never has to. At the Glass Lantern Festival, deep beneath the reservoir, she watched him slip a phone into his coat. A second phone, one she had never seen. So she came home early. Security footage showed his car was never at the port. In the suspended glass greenhouse, she found him with another woman. A velvet box, a merger contract, a wedding schedule, and a divorce folder with her own name typed across the front. She did not scream. She raised her phone and photographed every page. Then she made one call. What that single phone call set in motion, no one in the Yoon family saw coming. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The seventh lantern refused to light, and Brooke Adebayo lifted it anyway. She held the little glass sphere up toward the strand of paper suns overhead, tilted the wick toward a flame that wasn't hers, and let a stranger's fire become her own. The glow caught. It filled the sphere and spilled across her knuckles, warm gold on castaño oscuro skin. Around her, 3,000 people did the same thing at the same moment, and the underground reservoir stopped being a cavern and became a sky turned upside down. Someone had drained the old water tunnel beneath the city 40 years ago. Someone else had decided, this year, to fill it with light instead. The Glass Lantern Festival. Brooke had read about it on the invitation. The thick cream card with her married name embossed in ink she could feel with her thumb. She hadn't expected the ceiling to be so far away. She hadn't expected the cold stone under all that warmth. They'd come down the long stair together an hour ago, 90 steps cut into wet rock, the crowd hushing lower with each turn, and a boy at the bottom in a red sash had bowed and handed each guest one empty sphere and one strip of paper. "Write what you're afraid to lose," the boy had said, in careful English, because he'd been told to say it in English to her. "You put it inside, it burns first, the light stays." Brooke had written nothing. She'd folded the empty strip and slid it into the sphere, and told herself it was manners, not superstition, that kept her from naming the thing on paper in a room full of strangers. She'd carried the unlit lantern for an hour. Now it burned, someone else's flame inside her empty confession, and she found she liked it better that way, lit by the room, hiding what she hadn't said. "There you are." Jae-hyun's hand found the small of her back before his voice reached her. He always did that, arrived at her spine first, her ear second. She turned into him and the movement was practiced, easy, 2 years of turning. "You disappeared," she said. "I bought you something." He didn't show her yet. His hand stayed at her back, guiding her 3 steps to the railing that overlooked the lower gallery, where the lanterns floated on black water like a second festival for the drowned. "Look down first." She looked down. The water held the whole ceiling in it. Every lantern doubled, and for a second, she couldn't tell which lights were real and which were only reflections agreeing to look real. She filed the thought away without knowing why. "Now look up," he said, and pressed something cool into her palm. A hairpin. Old gold, a single camellia worked into the head of it. Petals so thin they'd gone soft at the edges from handling. Not new. That was the thing that reached her. It wasn't new. Jae-hyun bought new. Jae-hyun bought the loud and the flawless and the just arrived. This had a history in it. "It was my grandmother's," he said. "She wants you to have it before she meets you." Brooke closed her fingers around the pin. "You said she never leaves Jeju. She's making an exception." He smiled, and the smile did what his smiles always did, which was arrive fully formed, already complete, a door already open. "For you." She let him take the pin back and slide it into the heavy coil of her hair, the big loose coke high and behind, and his fingers were careful in a way that made the careful feel like the message. A woman 2 railings over was watching them. Brooke had learned to notice this in the last 2 years. the watching. They were a thing people watched. The Korean man in the charcoal suit with the serpent inked up the left of his throat, and the black woman in wine-colored silk beside him, and the way the two of them fit together like the design had been drawn before either of them was born. "They're staring," Brooke murmured. "They always stare." He said it without vanity, the way you'd report weather. "Does it bother you?" No, it didn't. That was the truth. And it was also the first small lie she'd tell herself tonight, because something had begun to bother her, and she hadn't found it yet. They moved through the gallery together. He kept one hand on her, always, a palm or two fingers or the light architecture of his knuckles at her waist, and people came to him the way iron comes to a magnet, quietly, and unable to help it. A man in a gray vest bowed and called him Director Yoon, and spoke fast, low Korean that Brooke caught the shape of but not the meat. A woman pressed a business card into his free hand. He pocketed it without looking. He introduced Brooke to none of them by her profession, only by her name, only as his, and she'd stopped minding that too, or told herself she had. "Your Korean's getting better," he said, when the gray vest had gone. "You understood him. Half of him." "Which half?" "The half that's afraid of you." Something moved behind his eyes. Not offense. Interest. He looked at her the way he'd looked at her the first night, across a fundraising table for her foundation, when she'd told him no twice before dinner, and yes exactly once after it. "You see too much," he said. "You married me for it." "I did." They found the private alcove near the northern arch, roped off, a table with 2 glasses of something pale, and a plate neither of them would touch. This was the part of every evening she liked best, the 10 minutes when the crowd became a hum, and it was only the two of them and whatever they were building. She lowered herself onto the bench. Her feet ached in the nude heels. She slipped one off under the table and pressed her bare soul to the cold stone, and let the cold be honest. "Tell me about her," Brooke said. "Your grandmother." Jaehyun sat. He turned one of the glasses a quarter turn without drinking. "She raised me. My mother left, my father was my father." A pause where a whole family lived. "Seol-hwa taught me which people to trust." "And she trusts me?" "She's never met me. She trusts what I bring home." He looked at her. "She's not sentimental. Don't expect warmth. Expect a test. I've passed tests before. Not hers." He said it lightly, but he turned the glass another quarter turn while he said it, and Brooke had learned to read his hands the way other wives read a jaw. The glass turned when the thing underneath was not light. "What does the family do, Jaehyun?" She asked it the way she'd asked it before, 3 or 4 times across 2 years, and she watched, as she always watched, for the seam. "Import. Development. A clinic group. Now, thanks to you." The smile. The door. "You've met my accountants. You've seen the buildings." "I've seen the buildings you show me. Those are the buildings. And the men who bow to you and are afraid?" "Everyone's afraid of money," he said, easily. "You're afraid of it yourself. That's why you give so much of it away." It was a good answer. It was almost the truth, which is the most dangerous kind of answer, and she'd taken it before, because taking it was warm, and refusing it was cold, and she was, God help her, in love with the warmth. She took it again now, but she filed it beside the reflections and the 2 phones, in the growing drawer of things she'd taken instead of opened. "Your grandmother," Brooke said, coming back to it, because Seol-hwa was the one door in his family he'd left ajar. "She's really coming to the mainland. For me." "She's coming because it's time." Something crossed his face. Quick. Gone. There are things she keeps. Things that pass to a wife when she decides the wife is real. She's decided you're worth deciding about. That's more than she's given anyone since my mother. He looked at the pin in Brooke's hair. "Wear that when you meet her. She'll want to see you chose it. You put it there. Then don't tell her that." Brooke laughed, and the laugh was real, and it was in the middle of that real laugh that his phone buzzed against the table, and she saw his hand cover it before the screen could turn. Fast, a little too fast for a man who let a dozen people's cards go unpocketed. He tilted the screen down, silenced it with his thumb, and returned his attention to her without a break, without a seam, the same complete smile. "Work?" she asked. Always work. And she believed him, because it was easy to believe him, because 2 years of turning had taught her spine to trust his hand before her mind could check it. But she had seen the phone, not the message, the phone. It was black, slim, cased in matte, and it was not the phone she'd bought him for their first anniversary. The one with the tiny scratch near the camera where he'd dropped it in Busan. The one she'd seen in his jacket 40 minutes ago when he'd handed it to a waiter to photograph the two of them beneath the lanterns. 2 phones. She filed it where she'd filed the reflections in the black water. She didn't take it out and look at it. Not yet. "Dance with me," she said instead, and stood, and gave him her hand, because the fastest way to watch a man is to hold him. There was no music that demanded dancing. There was only the low hum and the drift of 3,000 lanterns and the reflected drowned festival below. But he rose, because she'd asked, and he set one hand at her waist and took her fingers in the other, and they moved in a small, slow circle in the roped alcove, while the city's oldest water tunnel glowed above and beneath them. Up close she could smell the cold of the stone on his collar, and, under it, the cedar of him. His pulse was in his throat, over the ink, and she watched it, and it was even, steady. A man with nothing at all to hide has a pulse like that. So does a man who has hidden things for so long that the hiding has become rest. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm counting." "Counting what?" "How many people it takes to make you turn your phone face down." His hand didn't tighten on her waist. That was the thing. If it had tightened, she'd have had an answer, but it stayed exactly where it was, and his voice stayed exactly where it was, low and amused. "You're jealous of my phone." "I'm curious about your phone." Curiosity killed something. "Cats." She smiled up at him. "I'm not a cat." "No." He turned her in the small circle. "You're not." "Say something true," she said into his collar. "One true thing." "It's our festival. People write down what they're afraid to lose and burn it." His hand moved, slow, up the line of her spine and back down, a man taking his time. "I'm afraid of one thing," he said, "losing what I've built before it's finished." "That's not a person." "No," he agreed. "It isn't." And he said it without apology, the way he said everything, and she felt the small cold of it and told herself it was honesty, because honesty was warmer than the alternative, and she was still choosing warm. They finished the slow non-dance, and he walked her back to the bench and excused himself to speak to a man who'd been waiting at the rope with the patience of the well-paid, and Brooke sat with one shoe off and her foot on the cold floor and watched her husband become someone else's for 4 minutes. Not another woman's, a business's. He shrank, then, the way he did. The openness closed a fraction, the smile went from door to wall, and the man who'd handed her his grandmother's camellia pin conducted something in fast Korean with his back half turned. She let her eyes go to his jacket. It hung open. The inside breast pocket, where the anniversary phone lived, showed the black corner of the case she knew, the little scratch invisible from here, but present in her memory like a birthmark. That phone. His phone. Where then was the second one? Not in that pocket. He'd slid it somewhere while she wasn't looking, and she'd been looking, and she still hadn't seen it go. She ran the evening backward in her mind, frame by frame, the way she ran a budget. The waiter with the camera. That phone had come from the breast pocket, gone back to the breast pocket. The buzz at the table, that had come from somewhere lower, faster, a pocket he could reach without opening his jacket wide. She thought of the way his hand had dropped, once, to his hip while he spoke to the gray vest. A small unconscious touch, a man checking that a thing was still where he'd left it. Left hip, trouser or the coat he'd shed at the top of the stair. The coat he'd shed at the top of the stair. She didn't move toward the coats. Not yet. A woman who moves the instant she understands is a woman who gets caught understanding. She stayed on the bench and let the knowledge sit in her like the cold stone under her bare foot. Present, unhurried, hers. A hand on her shoulder, not his. Mrs. Yoon, a woman she half recognized, wife of one of the foundation donors, glittering and slightly drunk. This festival, isn't it? Impossible. "And you two?" I said to my husband. I said, "That's the most beautiful couple in this whole tunnel," and he agreed, and my husband never agrees. "You're kind," Brooke said, and meant the reflex of it. "How long now, for you and the director?" 2 years next month. 2 years. The woman shook her head as if 2 years were a miracle, which, Brooke thought, in some rooms it was. And still like that. Look at him looking at you. Brooke turned. He was looking at her. Across the alcove, mid-sentence with the patient man, Jae-hyun had turned his head and found her, and the look was the complete thing again, the door-open thing, aimed only at her over the shoulder of his own business. It was a good look. It was the look she'd married. It had never once, in 2 years, made her feel watched instead of seen. Until tonight. Tonight, for the first time, she wondered whether a man could practice a look until it was as automatic as a hand at the spine. She smiled back at him. She was good at this. She'd built a foundation with her smile, had raised 11 million for a clinic network with her smile, had sat across from men who wanted her small and stayed exactly her own size behind her smile. She sent it to her husband now, and he took it, and he turned back to his business satisfied, and Brooke Adebayo sat in a drained reservoir full of borrowed light and understood, without proof, without anything she could yet hold in her hand, that she was being managed. Before the donor's wife could drift, another woman reached the alcove, and this one Brooke knew by more than sight. Dr. Han, who ran the pediatric floor at the second clinic, the one in Incheon that the foundation had opened last spring. Han hadn't been invited by the Yoon name. She'd been invited by Brooks. "You built us an elevator," Han said, without preamble, taking both of Brooks' hands. "Do you know we lost a child last winter, carrying him up 3 flights because the old lift died? You read one email from a floor nurse and you built us an elevator in 4 months." "I read all the emails," Brooke said. "Nobody reads all the emails." "I do." And this was the truest thing she'd said all night. Truer than, "No, it doesn't bother me." Truer than, "Always work." She read all the emails. She'd built the whole thing. The Adebayo Foundation, the 4 clinics, the 11 million, the elevator in Incheon. Out of reading all the emails and answering the ones everyone else deleted, it had been hers before Jae-hyun. It was the one country in her life he'd married into rather than founded. "He's lucky," Han said, lowering her voice, glancing toward the director's turned back. "Does he know how lucky?" Brooke watched her husband conduct his quiet business against the lantern light. "He tells me he does." "That's not the same as knowing." "No," Brooke said. "It isn't." Han squeezed her hands once and went. Brooke stayed standing a moment, and the warmth she felt was not for Jae-hyun. It was for the elevator and the floor nurse and the emails no one else read, for the part of her that had a shape before she'd ever felt his palm on her spine. She reached up and touched the camellia pin in her hair, a dead woman's flower she'd never met, given by a man with 2 phones. She was, she realized, holding 3 things at once tonight that had come to her second hand. The fire in her lantern, the pin in her hair, the smile she kept returning to him across the room. Only the foundation was first-hand. Only the foundation was hers, all the way down. Brooke put her shoe back on. She stood and moved along the railing, unhurried, a beautiful woman admiring lanterns, and she let her path curve toward the little service corridor behind the northern arch where the caterers came and went with their trays. Not because she'd decided anything. Because her feet had decided, the way her feet had chosen the cold stone, the way her spine had learned to trust his hand. Some part of her below the smile was moving, and she'd learned long ago to let it. Her mother had taught her the walk, Grace Adebayo, who'd cleaned other people's offices at night and audited their books by day, who'd told her only daughter, "When you know a thing before you can prove it, don't let your face know it too. Walk like you're admiring the curtains, then find the drawer." Brooke had used the walk in boardrooms, in banks, in the office of a man who'd tried to skim the foundation's first $500,000 and never understood how she'd caught him. She used it now, in a lantern-lit tunnel, on her own husband. The thought sat wrong in her chest and she kept walking anyway. The corridor was cooler and smelled of propane and cut lemons. A young server hurried past with an empty tray and dipped his head at her. "Mrs. Yoon." And she nodded and kept on as if she belonged, because she did. Because she was the director's wife, and the director's wife belonged everywhere. Coats hung on a steel rail. Guests' coats, checked and tagged. And there, third from the end, the deep charcoal of his overcoat, the one he'd worn down the long stone stair and then shed at the top, because the tunnel was warmer than the street. She stopped in front of it. She told herself she was cold. She told herself she'd come for her own wrap and taken a wrong turn. She told herself several small, easy things, and then she stopped telling herself anything, and she slid 2 fingers into the inside pocket of her husband's coat, the way she'd slid the envelope into the zippered pocket of her own life 100 times. Quiet, deliberate, a woman who knew how to hide a thing knowing where another person might. Nothing in the left pocket, a folded receipt in the right, and then, in the small hidden pocket sewn behind the lining, the one a tailor adds for a man who wants somewhere no one thinks to look, her fingers found glass. Voices approached the mouth of the corridor. She went still, her fingers deep in the lining, the glass just brushing her fingertips. 2 servers, arguing softly about a tray of glasses, passed the opening without looking in. Their footsteps faded toward the noise. Somewhere behind them, faint, a woman laughed at something the director had said. That particular pitch a room takes when Jae-hyun has decided to be charming. He was still out there. He was still busy. She had a minute, maybe 2. She drew it out. The second phone. Black, matte, no scratch by the camera. Newer than the one that lived over his heart. It weighed the same as the truth usually does, which is to say almost nothing, which is to say it sat in her palm like the camellia pin had sat, cool and small, and full of a history she hadn't been shown. She pressed the side. The screen woke. It didn't ask for his face. It didn't ask for a code. It woke straight to a lock screen with no photo of her on it. No photo of anyone, just the time, 9:47, and a single banner of a message that had arrived while he covered the screen with his hand, and she'd been counting his pulse in the alcove. The banner showed a name, not a contact. Just 2 syllables and a comma, and the first 6 words of what came after, before the lock screen cut it off. 6 words. She read them once. She read them twice, the way she'd taught herself to read anything that could change her life. Twice, slowly, so that later, no matter what he said, no matter how complete the smile, she would know she had not misread. Behind her, far off, at the mouth of the corridor, a voice she loved said her name into the warm lantern air. Easy, unhurried, a man looking for his wife. Brooke? She did not turn around yet. She stood with his second phone in her hand and 6 words on its face, and above her and below her 3,000 borrowed lights burned in the dark, doubled in black water, each one exactly as real as its own reflection. She slid the phone back into the hidden pocket, behind the lining, exactly as she'd found it, deep, silent, undisturbed. Then she fixed his grandmother's camellia in her hair and turned toward her husband's voice and smiled. He was at the mouth of the corridor, one hand on the frame, his head tilted with the mild concern of a man whose wife has wandered off at a party. There you are, he said again, the way he'd said it under the lanterns an hour ago, arriving at her spine before her ear. I lost you. I got cold. She lifted the empty lantern she'd carried in with her, its borrowed fire steady. I came to find my wrap. Did you find it? No, Brooke said. Not yet. He held out his hand, palm up, the door already open, and she crossed the cool corridor and put her fingers in his, and his hand closed around hers exactly as it always had. Warm, sure, certain of her. She let it. She walked with him back into the borrowed light, 3,000 lanterns doubled in black water, and she matched her step to his and her smile to his, and gave nothing away, because that was the walk, because her face didn't know yet what her hands had learned. 6 words. She'd read them twice. She'd know what to do with them by morning. Brooke left the festival an hour before she'd planned to. She told Jae-hyun her head hurt from the lantern smoke, and he pressed his palm to the small of her back one last time and told the driver to take the long road along the water so she could rest. She rested with her eyes open, watching the tunnel lights peel backward across the ceiling of the car, the second phone's 6 words sitting behind her teeth like a stone she couldn't swallow. At home, she did not sleep. She lay in the dark of their bedroom and listened to the building breathe, the hum of the wine cellar 2 floors down, the elevator settling, the faint tick of the heating. Somewhere past 2 in the morning, she got up, poured water she didn't drink, and stood at the window that faced the river. The camellia hairpin was still in her hair. She'd forgotten to take it out. She took it out now, and set it on the marble by the sink. Careful, the way you set down something that belongs to someone who is watching you. By morning she had a plan, and the plan was small. She would not accuse him. She had learned from Grace that an accusation is a door you can only walk through once, and you walk through it knowing what's on the other side, or you don't walk through it at all. So she would look first. She would find the drawer before she opened it. Jae-hyun left at 7. He kissed her temple, smelled of cedar and cold air, and told her he had a shipment clearing at the port in Incheon, a delayed container, customs, the kind of dull morning that made him useful. He said he'd be back by 3. He said it easily, giving the glass no reason to turn in his hand, because his hands were empty and his voice was warm. Brooke kissed him back. She watched the private elevator take him down. Then she went to the study and opened the building's security portal, the one the concierge desk kept for residents, the one that logged every vehicle through the underground gate. His car had not gone toward Incheon. The gate camera time-stamped his sedan turning left at 711 north toward the old canal district, the wrong direction for the port by 40 minutes. She sat with that. A wrong turn is a wrong turn. A man forgets something, doubles back, takes a call. She wrote nothing down. She closed the portal, showered, dressed in the cream tailoring and the white coat, because Thursday was clinic day, and the clinic did not care what she'd seen in a camera feed at dawn. She made it to the Aurea building by 9. She sat through a foundation board call about the Incheon pediatric floor. She signed 2 grant releases. At 11, she stood in the corridor outside the pharmacy dispensary and read, for the 3rd time, an internal transfer note that did not add up. A dermatological supply line, cold chain, routed through a logistics partner she'd never approved. She'd seen the partner's name once. She couldn't place it. She photographed the note with her clinic phone and told herself it was nothing, the way you tell yourself the sound in the wall is the house settling. At noon, she called Jae-hyun. It went to voicemail. At 12:40, she called the port office in Incheon, the number on his own letterhead, and asked the clerk in polite Korean whether Director Yoon's container had cleared. The clerk was helpful. There was no container in Director Yoon's name today. There had been nothing scheduled at that berth all week. Brooke thanked him and hung up and stood very still in the middle of her own office with the white coat hanging off her shoulders, and for the length of one breath she let herself feel the floor tilt. Then she straightened it. The assistant knocked with a question about the afternoon vaccine clinic. Brooke answered it in full sentences. She approved the cold storage requisition, initialed the volunteer roster, told the girl the pediatric floor's ribbon cutting could move to the 15th. She heard her own voice do all of this from a small distance, the way you hear a nurse read vitals in a room where something worse is happening in the bed. Her hands signed. Her mind walked north along a canal she hadn't driven to yet. She thought about the supply note again. Cold chain, a partner she'd never approved, routed through her clinics, under her name, wearing her reputation like a coat. She'd almost let herself call it clerical. A man who wanted to hide something inside a foundation would choose the one part of it no board member ever read, the freight, the temperature logs, the dull spine of the thing. He would choose the part she'd built to be trusted. She did not drive to the canal district to look for his car. That was the mistake of a woman who wanted to be caught looking. Instead, she thought about the wrong turn. North, the old canal district. And she thought about the one place north that belonged to the Yoon family, and not to her, the glass house. He'd shown it to her once, early, before the wedding. A greenhouse the family had built on the top 2 floors of a converted mill above the canal, a suspended room of glass and iron, camellias and citrus and orchids climbing an old brick chimney, a place his grandmother had planted decades ago, and no one tended anymore except a caretaker who came twice a week. Jae-hyun had called it, the only thing my family made that doesn't make money. He'd said it like a confession. She'd believed him. She left the clinic at 1. She told her assistant she had a lunch. The mill sat where the canal turned, 4 brick stories with a modern glass box grafted onto the top, like a lantern set on a coffin. There was a service entrance on the east side, a freight lift with a caretaker's code, and Brooke knew the code because she'd stood beside Jae-hyun the day he punched it in, and had, without meaning to, without knowing she'd ever need it, counted the tones. 4 notes. She'd counted them the way she counted his pulse. It was a thing she did. She parked 2 streets over. She walked the last block the way Grace had taught her. A woman admiring the old brick, the ironwork, the water, unhurried, belonging. His sedan was there, parked in the shadow of the loading bay, nose out, the way a man parks when he might need to leave fast. And beside it, a second car she didn't know, pale gray, low, expensive, the kind of car that is chosen to look like weather. Brooke put her hand flat against the hood of the gray car. Warm, recent. She stood there a moment with her palm on someone else's engine and made herself breathe to a count of 4. Grace used to do this in the stairwell of a building she cleaned. Before she walked into the office, she wasn't paid to read. You go in slow so you can leave slow. Fast is for people who got caught. Brooke lifted her hand off the hood. She checked her reflection in the gray window, the cream tailoring, the coat folded now over her arm and out of sight. A woman who might be a buyer, a broker, anyone with a reason to admire a converted mill above the water. She took the freight lift. She did not take it to the top. She took it to the 3rd floor, to the caretaker's level below the glass, where the old chimney rose through a gap in the floor, and a steel stair spiraled up into the greenhouse. From there she could hear them before she could see them. 2 voices. His, low, the register he used when he was building something. And a woman's, cool, unhurried, a voice that placed each word down like a chess piece and let go. Brooke climbed 3 steps and stopped where the stair met the glass floor, where a bank of camellias in tall ceramic pots screened her from the room. Through the leaves she saw them. Jae-hyun stood with his jacket off, sleeves folded to the forearm, the snake climbing the left side of his neck dark against his collar. The woman sat on the arm of an old iron bench with her legs crossed, and Brooke had never seen her, and knew her at once. The way you know the shape of a thing that has been standing in your house for a year with the light off. Tall, sheet-black hair parted at the center, straight enough to reflect. A pale suit the color of frost. A signet ring on the right hand catching the greenhouse light. She held a slim folder against her knee and tapped it once, twice, with 1 nail. You said spring, the woman said. It's nearly summer. Spring was a number for the lawyers. Jae-hyun crossed to a low glass table between them. On it sat 3 things Brooke made herself look at, one at a time, the way you read a name and address twice, so you never have to wonder if you read it wrong. A velvet box, small, square, closed. A bound contract, thick, tabbed with colored flags, the cover stamped with 2 logos she recognized, Yoon, and the mark of a shipping conglomerate she'd seen in the business pages, the kind of merger that made ministers return calls. And a printed schedule, a calendar, weeks blocked in color. At the top, in a font meant for invitations, a word she could read even through leaves and glass because it was the same in every language of money. Wedding. The grandmother, the woman said. She's the problem. She won't move while the American is still your wife. She's not American. She's your wife. The woman set the folder on the table beside the box, squared it to the edge. That's the only nationality that matters to Seohwa. Jae-hyun opened the velvet box. Brooke could not see what was in it from where she stood. She saw his face as he looked at it, the same face he wore when he checked a figure he already knew was correct. He closed it and slid it toward the woman. Ryu Na-ri, he said, and the name landed in Brooke like a coin dropped down a long shaft, still falling. Wear it when the contract sign, not before. So Nari did not take the box. She looked at it on the table between them, the way a person looks at a debt they intend to collect in full. And the divorce, she said. Jae-hyun reached into the leather case, leaning against the bench, and drew out a second folder, gray, unmarked, and set it flat on the table, and turned it so it faced the empty chair, so it faced the room, so it faced, though he could not have known it, the exact bank of camellias behind which his wife had stopped breathing. He opened it to the first page. Brooke read her own name upside down through the leaves. Brooke Adebayo, petitioner, a date, a clause, the word irretrievable. Filed the day after the merger, Jae-hyun said, not before. The timing has to look like grief, not strategy. And the foundation? The foundation's already ours. He said it lightly, almost tender, a man crediting his wife. Her clinics, her name, her 11 million in goodwill. She built the front. She just doesn't know it's a front yet. Nari uncrossed her legs and stood. She crossed to the glass table and rested one hand flat beside the contract, and when she spoke, her voice had dropped the boredom it had worn like perfume. My family didn't sign a merger to inherit a woman's charity, Jae-hyun. The cold chain lines run under the clinics. The clinic paperwork moves them. If your wife starts reading her own supply notes, she reads everything. He said it the way a man says the price of a thing he's decided to buy anyway. She read a nurse's email once and built an elevator in 4 months. That's why the front works. No one audits a saint. Saints get canonized, Nari said. Then people study them. Jae-hyun almost smiled. By the time anyone studies her, the name on the door will be yours. Brooke's hand, at her side, closed slowly around nothing. The cold chain lines run under the clinics. She thought of the transfer note she'd photographed at 11, the dermatological supply, the partner she couldn't place, the routing she'd never approved, and the note stopped being a thing the house had done while settling. The house had not settled. The house had been built around her, one beam at a time, while she signed the grant releases and read the nurse's emails and thought she was the one holding the pen. And Sel Hua, Nari said, returning to it, because the old woman was the one variable her family's lawyers could not price. You keep saying she's the problem. Solve her. You don't solve my grandmother. For the first time his voice changed. A hairline. You wait for her. She controls things she's never named. Until she names them, we move around her. After the merger, she'll have a scandal on the mainland and a granddaughter-in-law she can't call real, and she'll do what she always does when the family embarrasses her. He straightened the wedding calendar so its edge ran true with the tables. She'll go quiet on Jeju and let the young people bury it. You'd better be right. I'm right about the schedule. Something moved in Brooke's chest that was not grief and was not yet rage. It was older than both. It was the sensation of a floor she'd trusted turning out to be a lid. She did not gasp. She had spent 27 years learning not to make the sound that gets you caught. She stood in the camellias with her heart going hard and even, and she made a decision, and the decision was also small. She took out her phone. Not the clinic phone, her own. She thumbed the camera silent. She'd silenced it years ago, a habit from board meetings where the shutter sound was rude, and she raised it to the gap in the leaves, and she did the thing Grace had never had to teach her, because Grace had done it every night with a ledger and a copier in an office that wasn't hers. She documented the drawer, the velvet box on the table, the merger contract, tabbed, stamped, the 2 logos sharp, the wedding calendar with its invitation font, the gray folder open to her own name, the word irretrievable. The date after the merger. She widened the frame to catch all 4 in one shot. Box, contract, calendar, petition. The whole machine on one glass table, because a single photograph of the whole machine is worth more than 4 photographs of 4 parts, and Grace had taught her that too, in a manner of speaking. 1 line, a name and an address. You keep the paper that ties it together, not the paper that's easy to explain away. She took the shot. She took a second. She zoomed on the petition's date and took a third. She caught Nari's ringed hand resting beside the velvet box, and the snake at Jae-hyun's collar as he leaned to point at a clause, so no one could ever tell her later that she'd photographed 2 strangers she'd invented. Then the caretaker's lift, 3 floors down, groaned awake. Someone had called it. The mechanism shuddered through the old brick, through the steel stair, through the soles of Brooke's shoes. Jae-hyun's head came up. Nari went still in the frost-colored suit. You said the caretaker comes Tuesdays, she said. He does. They both looked toward the stair, toward the camellias, toward the gap in the leaves, where a phone had just gone dark and dropped to a woman's side. Brooke moved. She did not run. Running is a sound and a rhythm and a story that ends with your face in a report. She went down the steel spiral with her weight on the outsides of her feet, one hand on the cold rail, fast and level, the way you carry a full glass across a crowded room. Above her, Jae-hyun said something to Nari, low, and she heard her own name in it, not Brooke. Just the shape of a question about where his wife was supposed to be at 1 in the afternoon on a Thursday. She reached the caretaker's level. The lift was rising past her, empty, a false call, a resident 2 floors up, nothing. But it had bought her the seconds and she spent them. She took the service stair instead, The concrete fire stair, down and down, 3 flights, her breath tight and controlled, the cream coat over her arm now because a woman in a white clinic coat is a thing people remember. She came out into the loading bay, his sedan, the gray car, still warm, the canal beyond, brown and slow. She walked to her own car 2 streets over at exactly the pace of a woman who had eaten lunch. She got in. She sat with both hands on the wheel and did not start it. She looked at the 3 photographs, box, contract, calendar, petition, her name, the date. They did not dissolve when she looked at them. That was the thing about a photograph. It stayed. For a moment, the inside of the car went very small and very loud, and behind her sternum, something she'd built over 2 years came apart at a seam she hadn't known was a seam, and her eyes stung, and her hands on the wheel were not steady. She let it happen. She let it happen for the length of 1 red light changing to green in the mirror behind her. Then she wiped her face with the heel of her hand, once, and she was done. She scrolled the 3 photographs one more time, slower, cataloging them the way she cataloged a chart before rounds. The box she could not open in an image, but its presence on the table was the ring, and the ring was the wedding, and the wedding was dated in a font meant for a woman she'd met an hour ago, through a screen of leaves. The contract tied Yoon to a name she could look up from the driver's seat, and did. The shipping conglomerate, 3 keystrokes, a market cap with too many zeros to be about clinics, and the gray folder, her own name, petitioner, the word he'd chosen to describe 2 years of her life. Irretrievable. He'd let the lawyers pick it, and then he'd read it out loud in his grandmother's greenhouse without flinching, and Brooke understood that the flinch had been spent long ago, in some room she'd never been allowed into. On some morning she'd been reading a nurse's email and calling it love. She locked the phone. The photographs went dark. They did not go away. What he didn't say, standing in his grandmother's greenhouse crediting his wife for the front she'd built, was that the woman he'd married had spent her childhood learning exactly how a person hides a paper trail, and exactly how to find one. She did not call him, she did not text him a word, she did not drive back to the mill to be seen. She turned her own phone over in her hand, and she scrolled past his name in her favorites, past the photo of him laughing on a beach in Busan, the phone with the scratch, the man who kept a second one in his coat, and she pressed the one contact she trusted with a thing that could not be unknown. It rang twice. "You never call in the afternoon," Nia said. "No hello. Box braids, blue light of a laptop, the sound of a keyboard going quiet. What's wrong?" Brooke watched a barge slide under the canal bridge, heavy and unhurried, carrying something no one on the street would ever see. "I need you to look at some money for me," she said, quietly. "And I need you to look at a phone." The keyboard stopped entirely. Whose phone? My husband's. She heard how steady her own voice was, and did not trust it, and used it anyway. "He has 2. A pause. On the other end, the small sound of Nia sitting up straight. The sound of a friend becoming an ally. "Brooke, where are you right now?" "Outside a glass house he told me his family built for love." She started the car. "I have photographs, Nia. A merger, a wedding, and a divorce, all on one table. My name's on the divorce. It's dated after the merger." "After," Nia repeated, and Brooke heard her write it down, heard the tip of a pen press paper the way her mother's had, and something in her steadied at the sound. "That's not a marriage falling apart. That's a schedule." "I know. Don't go home." "I have to go home," Brooke said. "He can't know I know. Not yet." She pulled into the slow brown current of afternoon traffic, both hands sure now, the photographs black in her lap. "You find me the money, where it started, when it started, whose hands. I'll get you into the rest." "Send me the photos now," Nia said. "Not to your cloud. Straight to me, then delete them off your phone. If he has 2 phones, he has someone watching one of yours." A pause, the keyboard waking again. Fast. "And the supply note. You said you photographed a supply note, cold chain, a partner you didn't approve. Brooke, that's not a coincidence. That's a thread. Send me the routing number on it. It's on the clinic phone. Then the clinic phone comes home with you and lives in your bag until I've copied it." Nia exhaled. 1 table, 1 folder, 1 merger. That's a story he can call a rough patch to a judge. Money moving through your clinics for months is a story that ends his life. We build the second one. How long? Give me the routing number tonight and I'll have the first hands by morning. Brooke, Nia's voice dropped. Careful, the way you speak to someone standing near an edge. How long do you think you can sit across a dinner table from a man who filed to erase you and smile like you don't know? Brooke thought about the festival, the hand at the small of her back, the camellia hairpin she'd left on the marble by the sink like something a watched woman sets down. The blank strip of paper she'd fed into a glass lantern, refusing to name the one thing she was afraid to lose. She knew its name now. It had been the front all along. As long as it takes to make sure that when he finds out, she said, it's already too late for him. She hung up. She drove north into the ordinary traffic of an ordinary Thursday. A woman on her way home to her husband, 3 photographs in her lap that had turned 2 years of her life inside out, and she did not cry again, and she did not speed, and she did not miss the turn. Behind her, above the canal, in a glass room full of his grandmother's flowers, Jae-hyun closed a velvet box he thought no one had seen, and told the woman in the frost-colored suit that everything was on schedule. He was right about the schedule. He was wrong about whose it was. Brooke read the routing number off the clinic phone at 11 that night, standing in the walk-in closet with the door shut and the light off. She didn't want the glow reaching the bed. Jae-hyun slept on his back, one arm across the space where she should have been. She typed the 9 digits into a message, checked them against the photo twice, and sent them to Nia. Then she deleted the thread, the photo, and the number from her own device, the way Nia had told her. She stood in the dark and listened to him breathe. Even, slow, a man with nothing on his conscience sleeps like that, or a man who has moved his conscience somewhere she couldn't reach. Her phone lit once. 3 words from Nia. Got it. Sleep. She didn't sleep. By 6 the next morning, Nia had already called back, and Brooke took it on the terrace with the door slid closed behind her and a coat over her nightclothes. The city was still gray. Ferries crossed the river below in a line. The routing number isn't a shipping partner, Nia said. It's a payment corridor. The clinic's dermatology supply line pays into a holding account, and the holding account pays out to 4 vendors. 3 are real, 1 isn't. Which one? A company called Sehei Cold Logistics, registered 14 months ago. 1 director. No warehouse anyone can find, no trucks registered to it, and it's invoiced your foundation for $400,000 in cold chain handling since spring. Nia paused. Brooke, the director is a shell name, but the shell name signs with the Ryu family seal. Brooke set the coffee down on the rail. She hadn't drunk any of it. Nari. Nari's people. Same seal you photographed on her right hand. The seal. She had it on her phone, the ring pressed flat against the veneer of the glass table, next to the wedding calendar. She had the tattoo too, the snake climbing the left side of his neck, so that no one could stand in a room later and say it wasn't him. She had assembled a case in the dark of a mill, without knowing yet how deep the floor went. 14 months, Brooke said. That's the part I need you to hear. Nia's voice slowed. The company's older than the affair looks, so I pulled his second phone from the metadata you gave me, the burner, the matte black one. I couldn't get inside it, but I got the account it syncs to, and the account has a travel history. Tell me. The clinic expansion trip, last spring. Busan, then 2 days you thought were Busan that weren't. Nia let it land. He wasn't scouting a 3rd clinic site, he was meeting the Ryu logistics arm. Nari was on the same manifest, adjoining rooms. Brooke watched a ferry cut its wake across the flat water and thought about a photograph on that trip. The 2 of them on a pier, his hand on the small of her back, the gesture he used on everyone he wanted to look like he owned. She had framed that photograph. It hung in the hall. So it started before the trip, she said. The trip was where they stopped hiding it from each other. Yes, and I paid for the trip. Foundation travel budget. You paid for all of it, Nia said. That's what I need you to understand before you do anything. This isn't a husband with a girlfriend. This is a husband who built a company inside your company. Your name is on the outside of it. Every wall he raised with your goodwill holding up the roof. Brooke picked the coffee back up. Cold now. She drank it anyway. Then we take the roof. We take the roof carefully, Nia said. Because right now, the paperwork says you're the one moving the money. You signed the releases. Your foundation invoiced the shell. If this breaks wrong, you don't expose him. You confess for him. The word sat in Brooke's chest like a stone. Confess. She had signed 2 supply releases at the board meeting on Thursday, without reading past the letterhead, because she trusted the letterhead, because the letterhead was hers. She had been trained her whole life to read the document that binds everything, and she had stopped reading the moment the document had her own name on top. How long to reverse it, she said. To reverse it, weeks. To document it so it can't be reversed onto you. That I can start today. Nia exhaled. But I need access, and I need it before he notices anyone looking. The second he feels the floor move, he moves faster than us. Men like this always have the exit already dug. Inside the glass, Jaehyun stirred. Brooke saw the shape of him rise and cross toward the kitchen. He's up, she said. I'll get you what you need from the clinic today. Same as Thursday. Nobody watches me there. Brooke. Nia stopped her before she could hang up. One more thing on the phone account. There were photos in the sync folder. I couldn't open the encrypted ones, but the thumbnails cached. A beat. He's been photographing your apartment. The furniture, the art on the walls. Room by room. Empty rooms. Like a man taking inventory. Brooke turned and looked back through the glass at the living room she had built. The low walnut table she'd carried home from a shop in Insadong. The pale, abstract canvas above the sofa. The orchids on the sill she watered herself because she didn't trust anyone else to. Why photograph what he already owns, she said, mostly to herself. He doesn't own it, Nia said, yet, but he's staging it for someone. You take pictures of a house before you sell it, or before you move someone new into it. The door slid open behind her. Jaehyun stood in it with 2 cups, steam rising, that same easy warmth on his face that had once made her feel chosen. You're up early, he said. Talking to who? Brooke slid the phone into her coat pocket, screen already dark. Nia. She wants to have dinner this week. I told her I'm swamped. She took the cup from his hand and let his fingers brush hers. Thank you. You look tired, he said. I didn't sleep well. The festival wore you out. He kissed her temple, the way he had 2 mornings ago before he turned north instead of toward the port. Take the car today. Rest. I have clinic, she said. Pediatric floor sign-off in Incheon. I can't miss it. Something moved behind his eyes, small, quick, gone. He nodded. Of course, the floor's yours. He said it like a gift. She heard it now for what it was. A man returning something he had already decided to keep. She dressed for clinic, the cream-tailored suit, the white coat over it. She let him watch her clip her hair up, and she left the camellia pin exactly where she had set it 2 nights ago, on the marble by the sink, untouched, so that he would see she wasn't hiding it and wouldn't wonder what else she wasn't hiding. At the clinic, she did the work first, real work. She walked the pediatric floor with Dr. Han, signed off on the elevator inspection, thanked the nurse whose email had built it. She did it because it was true, and because a woman who suddenly stops being useful is a woman who gets noticed. The whole time, a second clock ran under her ribs. At 11, she went to the supply office, closed the door, and pulled the cold chain manifests for the last 6 months. Nia had told her exactly what to find and how to photograph it. The vendor line, the routing account, the handling fee, the signature block. She laid each page flat, killed the camera shutter sound, and shot them one by one. Seohae Cold Logistics appeared on every second manifest, always for the same service. Dermatological cold chain relay, always to the same corridor account. But the manifests told her something the phone hadn't. The shipments didn't end at the clinics, they passed through. Product logged in at the Incheon dock under the foundation's name, sat in cold storage for a day, and shipped out again. Reclassified, relabeled, gone, to a receiving depot she didn't recognize. She photographed the depot name off the transfer log. Muryong Refrigerated Holdings. She stood very still in the little office with the fluorescent hum over her head. Muryong. She had heard the word once, at the mill, in the glass room, when Nari said the cold chain lines run under the clinics. She had thought it was a figure of speech. It wasn't. There was a real building at the end of the line, and it was refrigerated, and it took delivery of things that arrived labeled as skincare and left labeled as nothing at all. She sent Nia the depot name from the clinic phone and one line of her own. The dermatology shipments don't stop at the clinics. They pass through and go to Muryong. What's in the boxes? Nia's answer took 4 minutes. Don't send more from that phone after this. Muryong is on a watch list I'm not supposed to have seen. It's not skincare, Brooke. It's cold storage for things that need to stay cold and stay quiet. Bring the phone home. I'll clone it tonight. And stop pulling manifests. You've pulled enough to hang him. Pull one more, and you pull enough to hang yourself. Brooke put the clinic phone in her bag, in the inside pocket, the one with the zipper. She washed her hands at the supply room sink, though they weren't dirty, watched the water run, and turned it off. Then she went back out to the floor and smiled at a child in a wheelchair by the window, and the smile was real, and both things were true at once. That she wanted to burn the whole corridor down, and that she would sign every honest release this floor ever needed for the rest of her life. She was learning the shape of the war now. It wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be paper against paper, her mother's kind of war, fought in the ledger where nobody bleeds and everybody loses everything. She left the clinic at 1, the way she had 2 days ago, and drove home through the afternoon light. She did not turn north. She had no reason to. She knew now what was north. Halfway home, her phone rang through the car. Jae-hyun. She let it ring twice, arranged her voice, and answered. How's the floor? He said. Signed off. Han sends his thanks. The elevator passed inspection. She kept her eyes on the road and her voice on the surface of things. How's the shipping group? Tedious. Lawyers. A pause on his end, the small pause she had learned to read. The board wants to consolidate the foundation's vendor accounts. Streamline the clinic supply lines under one corridor. Cleaner books. I told them you'd sign off this week. There it was. He was asking her, in the flat voice of a man discussing paperwork, to put her signature on the exact walls he'd built inside her house. To consolidate her name over the shell one more time, deeper, harder to unstitch. Sure, she said. Send it over. I'll read it. You don't have to read it. It's routine. I always read it. She said it lightly, a wife's small vanity. My mother would climb out of the ground. He laughed, warm, and she heard nothing move behind it, and that frightened her more than a tell would have. Read it then, he said. Wednesday's fine. He hung up first. She drove the rest of the way with both hands on the wheel and her jaw tight. Wednesday. He'd given her a deadline without knowing he'd given her one, because whatever he wanted signed by Wednesday was the keystone, the document that would make the corridor unbreakable, and now she knew when the keystone went in. At a red light, she took her hands off the wheel, flexed them once, and put them back. That evening, she pulled the consolidation packet the moment it hit her inbox and read every line the way Grace had taught her, backward, from the signature block up, because the trap is always near the bottom where nobody's eyes are fresh. And there, in the third schedule, under a heading about unified cold chain handling, was Sehohe Cold Logistics again, moved from vendor to primary handler, granted authority over the routing account itself. Sign this, and she would hand Nari's shell the keys to the whole corridor, with her own name notarized on top. She photographed the schedule and sent it to Nia with 4 words. This is the keystone. Nia came to the penthouse at 9 that night, while Jae-hyun was at a dinner with the shipping group that Brooke no longer had to pretend to believe. Nia came up the service elevator with the navy blazer and the black backpack, and she set the laptop on the walnut table Brooke had carried home from Insadong, and she plugged the clinic phone in, and she worked. Talk to me while I do this, Nia said. Keeps you from watching the door. What do you need? Everything you signed since spring, every release, every board minute. If your name authorized the money moving, I need to show the exact moment you were lied to, so the timeline reads as fraud against you, not fraud by you. Nia's fingers moved. Fraud has a victim and a perpetrator. Right now the paperwork can't tell which one you are. My job is to make the paperwork tell. Brooke brought a box of board files from the study and set it down and started laying pages out on the floor in a grid, by date, the way Grace had taught her. You don't argue a ledger, you arrange it until it argues itself. Nia glanced at the grid and something crossed her face. Respect, maybe. And she said nothing and kept working. There's a keystone, Brooke said. He wants my signature on it by Wednesday. Consolidation packet. It gives the shell control of the routing account. Nia's hands stopped. Don't sign it. If I don't sign, he knows something changed. I've never refused a routine release in 2 years. Nia thought about that, chewing the inside of her cheek. Then stall it. Ask a boring question. Ask him to add a clause about audit rights. Something a careful wife would ask. Something that costs him nothing to grant and buys us days. Don't refuse, delay. A refusal is a flare, a question is furniture. Brooke wrote the question down on the back of a board minute, in her own small hand, the way her mother had written questions in the margins of other people's books at 2 in the morning. Ask about audit rights. Sound bored. Sound like a wife. The corridor's beautiful, by the way, Nia said, almost to herself, eyes back on the screen. I mean it as an insult. Whoever designed it is smart. The money never touches him. It touches you, then the clinics, then the shell, then Moriong. He's 4 rooms away from every dollar. If this ever broke, he'd stand there clean and point at your signature and grieve. She looked up. That's why the trip matters. The trip is the one place he stood in the same room as the Ryu money with his own body. That's the thread that reaches him. Everything else reaches you. An hour in, Nia stopped typing. I'm inside the sync folder, she said quietly. The encrypted photos. I got a key off the clinic phone. They shared a cloud login. Careless. She turned the laptop a few degrees so Brooke couldn't quite see, then thought better of it and turned it back. You should see this, or you shouldn't. I'll let you choose. Show me. Nia opened them. The apartment, room by room, exactly as the thumbnails had promised. The living room, the bedroom, Brooke's dressing table, her orchids. But there were more. Ones the thumbnails hadn't cached, and Brooke understood the inventory now, because in 3 of the photos there was a second set of measurements written in the corner in Jae-hyun's small, precise hand. Dimensions, in centimeters, and in one of them, laid across the foot of the bed she still slept in, was a garment bag she had never seen, long and pale, the kind that carries a dress. He's measuring the apartment for her furniture, Nia said, not selling it, replacing you in it. Brooke looked at the garment bag on the bed in the photograph and then, without meaning to, looked at the actual bed through the doorway, where there was no bag, not yet, and she felt the room tilt very slightly, the way the mill had tilted when she'd read the divorce date. She let it tilt. She let it last the length of a red light, the way she'd taught herself in the car. Then she straightened. When was that taken? Nia checked. Yesterday, while you were at clinic. So he had stood in her bedroom yesterday afternoon, after kissing her temple in the morning, and photographed the space around her sleeping body as a place to be furnished by someone else. He had measured her out of her own life with a tape and a steady hand. Copy all of it, Brooke said. The photos, the measurements, the timestamps. I want the day and the hour on every one. Already done. Nia hesitated. Brooke, there's a folder I can't open. Newer, different encryption, and it's not on the shared login. It's on the burner account only. The folder name is a date. She read it off. 3 weeks from now. Brooke didn't have to ask what happened in 3 weeks. The wedding calendar had told her at the mill, in invitation font, on heavy paper, next to a velvet box. That's the wedding, she said. That's the wedding, Nia agreed. And whatever's in that folder, he's keeping it off every account we can reach. Which means it's the part that matters most to him. Contracts, maybe? The merger close, or the thing that comes after the merger close. She closed the lid halfway. I'll get in. Not tonight. Tonight we lock down what we have. You back it up in 3 places and you tell no one. Not a lawyer, not the board, not your mother's ghost. The second this leaves this room before we're ready, he moves the money and burns the shell, and it's your signature left standing in the ash. Brooke gathered the pages off the floor in order and squared them. How long until I can move first? Give me 2 weeks to build it clean. Then you decide where you break it, and you break it somewhere public, somewhere he can't spin it into a private disagreement, somewhere there are witnesses and cameras and record. Nia unplugged the clinic phone and handed it back. You pick the room. I'll load the gun. And Muriong? Muriong I hand to people who aren't us, Nia said. You don't walk into a cold storage warehouse full of the Ryu family's quiet business. You put it in an envelope and you give it to someone with a badge, at the exact moment it does you the most good and them the least. Not before. Timing is the whole weapon, Brooke. He taught you that himself. He had the divorce dated after the merger so it would read as grief. We date our move the same way, after his, so it reads as justice. Brooke walked her to the service elevator. At the door, Nia stopped and looked at her. Really looked, the way a friend does when she's about to say the true thing. "You're not crying," Nia said. "I did that Thursday, in the car, at a red light." Brooke almost smiled. "It's out of my system, until the part where I need it." Nia studied her a moment longer. The women who survive men like this aren't the ones who don't feel it. They're the ones who file it. She touched Brooke's arm. "Get some sleep. Real sleep. You're going to need to be boring and calm and useless looking for 2 more weeks, and that's the hardest acting there is." The elevator took her down. Brooke stood in the quiet apartment full of her own furniture and the measurements of its replacement, and she went to the hall and took down the framed photograph from the pier, the one from the trip she now knew had been a lie inside a lie, and she looked at his hand on the small of her back. Then she put it back on the nail, exactly straight, exactly where it had been, because a wall with a photograph suddenly missing is a wall that asks a question. She went to bed before he came home. She lay on her side, facing the door, and when she heard the elevator and his key and his quiet steps, she kept her breathing even and slow, a woman with nothing on her conscience, or a woman who had moved her conscience somewhere he couldn't reach. He undressed in the dark. He stood over the bed for a moment. She felt him there, felt the small pause of a man checking that a thing is still where he left it, and then he lay down on his back, one arm across the space where she was, close enough that his hand rested on the curve of her hip, warm, proprietary, the same hand that had held the tape measure. She let it stay. She had 2 weeks to be furniture. She could be furniture. In the morning he was gone before she woke. A note on the marble by the camellia pin. "Board runs long today. Merger prep. Don't wait up. J." She read it twice, the way she read everything now, and she noticed the word he'd used. Merger. Not shipping group. Not dinner. He was getting careless the closer he got to the close, the way a man gets careless when he's decided the game is already won. She photographed the note. She put the phone down. She made coffee she didn't drink and stood on the terrace, and called Nia and said one thing. He wrote merger prep on a note this morning. In his own hand, he stopped bothering to lie inside the house. "Good," Nia said. "That means the close is near. When did the calendar say the merger signs?" Brooke closed her eyes and saw the heavy paper on the glass table. 9 days before the wedding. "Then that's our window." Nia's voice went flat and certain, the voice of someone loading a gun. "He signs the merger to make the money real. He marries her to make the succession real. And somewhere in the 9 days between, before he's finished and after he's committed, there's a room where you stand up and hand it all back to him, with your name cut out of it." A pause. "Pick the room, Brooke. I'll have everything ready, and when you break it so the whole city is watching." Brooke opened her eyes. Below her, the ferries crossed the flat gray water in their patient line, back and forth, carrying people who had no idea what moved in the cold boxes under the clinics they trusted. She thought of her mother, on her knees at night waxing other people's floors, reading other people's ledgers by day, teaching a small girl that the person who reads the document last is the person who wins. She had stopped reading the moment her own name was on top. She would never stop again. "I have the room," she said. "Where?" "The merger has a signing. Public. Press. The shipping group loves a photograph." Brooke set the cold coffee on the rail and did not drink it. "There's a pavilion they use. Glass, over the river. He'll want the whole city to see him win." She could hear Nia smile. "Then that's where the whole city sees him lose." 9 days, a merger, a wedding, and a warehouse full of cold, quiet boxes with her signature holding up the roof. Brooke went inside to the wall where the pier photograph hung straight, and she left it straight, and she began, very calmly, to build the room where she would take the roof down on his head. The pavilion sat on the river like something the water had grown. Glass on 4 sides, a floor of pale stone laid over the old flood tunnel that ran under the Han, and a ceiling that turned the afternoon into a grid of light. Brooke walked in through the press entrance 9 minutes before the signing, and no one stopped her, because the badge on her lanyard said Aurea Clinic Group, and the man at the rope had seen that logo on every wall in the building. She wore the wine dress, the one from the lanterns, the one he had put the camellia pin above 2 years running. She had chosen it the way a surgeon chooses the tray, Not for memory, for recognition. When the room turned, she wanted every phone in it to place her in half a second. Nia was already at the back, near the projection booth, box braids up, navy blazer, laptop bag over one shoulder like a woman there to fix the AV. She did not look at Brooke. That was the plan. Strangers until the last minute. The seats filled. Shipping men in gray, lawyers with folders, a row of reporters with the small, hungry stillness of people who had been promised a photograph and nothing more. At the front, a long table, 2 chairs, 2 pens laid parallel on a leather blotter, and between them the merger book, thick as a Bible, the Yoon crest embossed beside the navigation crest. Jae-hyun came in from the left. Charcoal suit, black shirt, no tie. He moved through the room the way he moved through everything, unhurried, letting the space arrange itself around him. Men half rose. He touched 2 shoulders and skipped the rest. At the table, he set his hand flat on the merger book for a moment, the way a man rests a hand on a door he has finally been given the key to. He had not seen her yet. Nari entered behind him. Ice gray suit, the clutch, the ring still on the right hand where it would stay until the ink was dry. She took a seat in the second row, not the front, playing counsel, playing distance. Their eyes met across the aisle for less than a second and then didn't again. 2 professionals, nothing owed. Brooke found a seat on the aisle, 6 rows back, and folded her hands in her lap. A man from the navigation firm stood, tapped the microphone, thanked the room. He spoke about corridors, about efficiency, about 2 family names becoming one logistic spine, from Incheon to the southern ports. He said the word future 4 times. And Brooke counted. Her mother had taught her to count the words a man leaned on. They were always the words that were lies. Director Yoon, the man said, and gestured at the table. Jae-hyun stood. He buttoned the jacket with 2 fingers. He looked, for one held beat, straight down the length of the room at the wall of glass and the river behind it, and the light came through and laid the grid across his face, and he almost smiled. Then he picked up the pen. "Before you sign," Brooke said. She did not stand yet. She said it at speaking volume, clear, into the small silence that comes before a signature. It carried. The microphone at the front caught the tail of it and threw it back off the glass, and 30 faces turned toward the aisle at once. Jae-hyun's hand stopped above the page. He found her. She watched him find her. The wine dress first, then the face above it, then the fact of her. Here, in this room, on this day. Something moved behind his eyes and was gone. The pen came down to the table without touching the line. "Brooke," he said. "Warm. Instantly warm. You didn't tell me you were coming." "No," she said. "I didn't." She stood now. She smoothed the front of the dress once, the way you settle a thing before you carry it, and she walked to the front of the room, up the center aisle, unhurried, because she had learned unhurried from him. "This is a private signing," said the navigation man, half to her, half to security by the door. "It's a press event," Brooke said. "You invited the press." She turned her head to the reporters, and she smiled at them, and it was a real smile, and 3 of them lifted their phones without being told. "You wanted this on the record. Good. So do I." "Brooke." Jae-hyun came around the corner of the table. Not fast. He put a hand toward her elbow, the old gesture, the hand at the back, the hand that steered. "Whatever this is, we can—" "Don't," she said. "Quiet. Just for him." He stopped. She reached the front and turned so the room was in front of her, and the glass wall was at her back, the river behind the glass, the light coming through and landing on the reporters, on the shipping men, on Nari in the second row who had gone very still with the clutch held in both hands. "Lights," Brooke said. The projection wall behind the table went white, then blue, then filled. Nia, from the booth, no expression, running the deck. The first image was a bank statement. Blown up to the size of a door, a holding account, 4 vendors listed, and the 4th circled in red, Seohae Cold Logistics. "That company doesn't exist," Brooke said. Her voice found its level and stayed there. "It has no warehouse, no trucks. 1 director on paper. It was registered 14 months ago, and since the spring it has billed my foundation $400,000 for cold chain handling it never did." The room made a sound, not words. the sound of 40 people leaning forward at once. A reporter in the third row was already typing with her thumbs. A shipping man leaned to the one beside him and said something behind his hand. Brooke let the number breathe. 400,000. She had learned from her mother that a figure hits a room harder than a verb. You did not tell people a man was a thief. You showed them the amount and let them arrive. Turn it off, Jae-hyun said. Not to her, to the booth, to the light. His voice was still even, but he had turned toward the projection now, and his hand had opened at his side. The slide changed. The registration seal, enlarged. The Ryu family chop, red and unmistakable, sitting at the bottom of the shell company's founding document. That's the Ryu seal, Brooke said. She did not look at Nari. She let the room look at Nari. Some of you know it. It's on the ring. A beat. Second row. Heads turned. Nari's face did not move, but her knuckles went pale around the clutch, and a reporter in the aisle stood up quietly to get the shot, and that was all it took. That was the photograph they'd come for. They just hadn't known it yet. Brooke had watched Nari once, in a glass house, take a signet ring off the table and declined to put it on until the contracts were dry. Cold, patient, a woman who understood timing. Brooke had built the whole afternoon around that one fact, that a patient woman, made visible before her time, has nowhere to be patient toward. The ring on the right hand was a secret only while no one photographed it. Now it was on a wall, the size of a door, and it belonged to the record. Enough, Jae-hyun crossed to the projection controls at the table and hit the panel. Nothing happened. The panel was dead. Nia had killed it from the booth an hour ago. He hit it again, and the room watched him hit a dead button, and Brooke let them watch. It runs from my machine now, she said. Not yours. That's rather the theme. The slide changed. 6 months of manifests, stacked, the red circles marking the same route on every second page. Foundation dock at Incheon. 1 day in cold storage. Reclassified out. These are shipments that come into my clinic's name as dermatological supply, Brooke said. They don't stay. They spend 1 day in cold storage and they leave, reclassified, to a refrigerated warehouse that is on a government watch list. It isn't skincare. It was never skincare. She let that sit. My name moved it. My signature. My foundation. Built for children in Incheon. Used as a laundry. This is slander, said one of the shipping lawyers, on his feet now, folder clutched. This woman has no standing to. I'm the settlor of the foundation and I sit on the board of the clinic group, Brooke said, without turning. I have every standing. Sit down. He sat down. She hadn't raised her voice. That was the thing that made him sit. Jae-hyun had stopped trying the panel. He stood beside the dead table with the merger book open to the signature line and the pen lying across it, and he looked at her, and for the first time in 2 years, Brooke watched him do the thing she had never seen him do. He calculated in front of people. The face he kept for the room was slipping, 1 degree, and underneath it was arithmetic, fast and cold, running the same numbers she had run at a red light with her hands shaking. You've been reading my mail, he said, low. He meant it to shame her, to make her the trespasser. I've been reading the documents, Brooke said. You taught me that. Whoever reads the document last is the person who wins. She held his eyes. My mother taught me first. You just reminded me. The slide changed. 2 folders, side by side, photographed on a glass table in a mill above a canal, a merger contract, a wedding schedule, and a gray divorce petition with her name on the top line. The room went quiet in a new way. That's a divorce petition, Brooke said. Petitioner, Brooke Adebayo. Filed for after the merger signs, so the timing reads like grief instead of a plan. She let her gaze travel the front row. You were all invited to witness a signature today. You're actually witnessing the last step of a schedule. The merger signs, the wife is removed. The foundation, the clinics, the 11 million in goodwill, all of it stays in the corridor, and the woman whose name is on it becomes a thief in a filing dated to look like loss. She turned, finally, and looked at him. Did I get the order right? She asked. You always liked the order. Jae-hyun said nothing. His jaw had set. The snake at his neck showed above the collar as he turned his head, and a reporter photographed that too, because she had told them, without telling them, where to point. Brooke, he said again, and this time the warmth was manufactured, and everyone in the room could hear the seam where he'd glued it on. You're upset. This is a misunderstanding of routine accounting. Come off the stage. We'll talk. Not here. Here, she said. It has to be here. You built it here. She swept a hand at the pavilion, the glass, the press. You like glass rooms. You like everyone watching the beautiful thing and no one watching the door. She stepped closer to the table, to the open merger book, to the two parallel pens. So watch this. She picked up his pen. He moved, half a step, instinct, and stopped, because to reach for a pen in her hand in front of 40 phones was a photograph he could not afford, and they both knew it, and she watched him know it. I'm not signing anything, Brooke said. You are, or you were. She set the pen down again, crosswise off the line. This merger runs on the corridor. The corridor runs through my foundation. As of 9 this morning, the foundation's cold chain accounts are frozen. She said it to the navigation men, not to him. Everyone, your logistics spine has no clinics to hide behind. There's nothing to launder through. You're buying a company whose partner just closed the road. The lead shipping man had risen slowly. He was looking at Jae-hyun now, not at her. Is this true? He said. It was not a question. It was a man reading a room and getting out of it. It's paperwork, Jae-hyun said. It's a tantrum. It will be resolved by... It's on a watch list, Brooke said. The warehouse. Moryong, I'd check what your name looks like next to it before you sign anything today. I'd check very carefully. The navigation man looked at the projection. He looked at the dead panel Jae-hyun had struck twice. He looked, longest, at the frozen bank statement the size of a door, at the red circle, at the amount. He was a man who had built a career on knowing which rooms to be out of, and Brooke watched the calculation cross him the way it had crossed Jae-hyun a minute before, the same arithmetic, arriving at the same total. We'll reschedule, the navigation man said, to no one, to the room, to the version of the afternoon that had died at the pen, pending review. There won't be a review, Brooke said. There'll be an audit. That's not the same thing. One of them you survive. A lawyer near the front tried once more. You are making public accusations you cannot. I'm reading you documents, Brooke said. Off a wall, in a room you invited cameras into. You're welcome to sue the paper. She tipped her head at the projection. It won't like the discovery. He had no answer to that. Lawyers rarely did, when the trap was that the truth was already on the record, and the only thing a lawsuit could do was read it aloud again. The navigation man buttoned his coat. That was his answer. A man buttons his coat when he is leaving. Two of his lawyers were already gathering folders. The merger, 3 minutes old at the pen, was dying in the water it was built over. Jae-hyun watched it die. He watched the spine of his year walk toward the door in a gray coat, and something in his face finally broke its surface, and it was not sorrow. It was the specific fury of a man who has always been 4 rooms away from the money and has just been dragged, in the light, into the same room as it. You have no idea what you've walked into, he said to her, low, and there was no performance left in it now. This was the true voice. She had heard it exactly once, in a glass house, from behind a bank of camellias. These aren't people you embarrass and go home. I know exactly what I've walked into, Brooke said. I walked into it 2 years ago, in a dress, holding your grandmother's pin. She let the words land where the reporters could hear them, because a name in a room like this was a shield, and she was arming herself in public on purpose. Yoon Seil-hwa, she's still in Jeju. She still hasn't decided I'm not real. A pause. You might want to remember that before you tell a room full of cameras what happens to me. His eyes flickered. It was small. It was the first genuinely small thing she had ever seen him do. The grandmother's name went into him like a splinter, and Brooke filed it, the way Grace had taught her to file the thing a man flinches at. There's one more, Brooke said, to the room. The slide changed a final time. Not a document, a photograph. A garment bag on the foot of a bed. Beside it, in a man's precise hand, a set of measurements, centimeters, a date in the corner, 3 weeks out. This was taken in my home, Brooke said, and for the first time her voice moved, 1 degree, and she let it, because the room needed to feel the floor of it. Well, I was at the clinic signing off a children's ward. He wasn't selling the apartment, he was measuring it. For the next one. She looked at Nari now. Just once. Long enough. The dress was already ordered. Nari stood. She did it well, chin level, clutched to her chest, and she walked up the side aisle toward the door with the unhurried step of a woman who has decided the story is over, and every camera in the room turned and followed her all the way out, which was the last thing on earth she wanted, and the exact thing Brooke had built for her. The door closed behind Nari. The navigation men were already through it. Jaehyun stood alone at the table with a dead panel and an unsigned book and 40 phones pointed at his face. He tried, one last time, the thing that had always worked. He softened his shoulders. He let a rueful weight come into his mouth, the look of a good man wronged by a woman's grief, and he spread his hands to the room the way he had spread them to donors' wives for 2 years. "My wife has been under strain," he said. "She built something remarkable, and she's frightened of losing it, and someone has fed her a story. I don't blame her. I blame whoever. Whoever measured the apartment," Brooke said. The rueful weight fell off his face. It just fell, the way a mask falls when the string is cut, and the reporters caught the second it happened, and that frame, the exact instant the performance left him, was the one that would run under every headline by morning. Not the seal, not the amount. The face, going empty, in the light, with no room left to be 4 rooms away. "You did this in glass," he said, and his voice had gone flat and low, and the microphone at the table caught it and carried it whether he wanted it or not. "You'll answer for it in the dark." "Then I'll bring my own light," Brooke said. "I've gotten good at it." "As of today," Brooke said, and now she spoke slowly, because these were the sentences she'd written last, in the dark, and she wanted them clean. "You have no authority over the Aurea Clinic Group, no authority over the Adebayo Foundation, no claim on the name, the funds, or the reputation. I built all 3 before I met you. I have taken them back." She set both hands flat on the merger book, the way he had rested his hand on it 4 minutes ago, when it was still his. "You are not my husband anymore. I'll file it myself. Petitioner, Brooke Adebayo, and the date will be today, in front of witnesses, so it reads like exactly what it is." She closed the book. The sound of it was small in the glass room. It carried anyway. "You can't afford what comes next," Jaehyun said. Quiet. A last card, laid face down. "Neither can you," she said. "That's the difference. I already know that. You're finding out." She turned and walked back down the center aisle, past the shipping men's empty chairs, past the reporters who parted for her and photographed her going, past Nia coming out of the booth now with the laptop bag on her shoulder, falling into step, 2 women leaving a room they had taken apart. Behind her, someone asked Jaehyun a question. She heard the shape of it, not the words. A reporter, pressing, the first of many. She heard him not answer. At the door she stopped. She did not look back at him. She looked at the glass wall and the river behind it, the water that had run under this floor for 40 years while the city walked over it and never knew. "He liked the water," she said to Nia, low, as they stepped out into the corridor. "He put the festival in a drained reservoir. He put the signing over the tunnel. He kept building rooms on top of things nobody was supposed to see." "And," Nia said. "I drained one of my own," Brooke said. They came out onto the walkway above the river. The afternoon was flat and bright, and the traffic ran along the far bank the way it always had. Nia checked her phone, thumbed it, held it up. Already the first clip was out. A 10-second cut. The wine dress, the frozen pen, the Ryu seal the size of a door. It had a number under it that was climbing while they watched. "That's the city seeing it," Nia said. "That's the city seeing it," Brooke agreed. She should have felt lighter. She had rehearsed feeling lighter. Instead, there was the thing she had learned to distrust. The flat quiet that comes after the first blow lands, when the body knows the fight is not over and refuses to celebrate. "You froze the accounts this morning," Nia said. "You told 40 reporters the warehouse is on a list. You put his mistress's ring on a wall." She said it evenly, taking inventory, the way she read a ledger. "He can't launder, he can't merge, he can't sell you as the thief without explaining the divorce he filed for first. You closed every door in one room." "I closed the doors I could reach," Brooke said. He has doors I can't see yet. Meaning what? Meaning a man like that doesn't lose in front of cameras and go home to think about it. Brooke watched the traffic on the far bank. He goes to the people he's afraid of. And I just told a room full of press that his grandmother hasn't decided I'm not real. A breath. I used her like a shield. I don't know yet if she'll agree to be one. Her phone buzzed. A number she didn't have saved. A Jeju area code. She looked at it for a moment. She thought of a woman in Jeju who had never come to the mainland, who guarded things that passed to a wife when she decided the wife was real. A woman whose name she had just used as a weapon in a room full of cameras, without permission, without knowing whether it would protect her or mark her. She let it ring twice, then she answered. Yes, she said. There was a pause on the line, the small settling pause of an old woman deciding how to begin. Then a voice, dry and even and entirely unhurried, in careful English. You wore the pin, Yoon Seo-hwa said. In the room today, I saw the picture. Brooke's hand tightened on the rail. Nia went still beside her, reading her face. I wore the dress, Brooke said. Not the pin. The pin is on my sink. Another pause. Then, dry, almost amused, almost not. Good. Then you understand more than he does. A breath. Come to Jeju, Brooke. There are things that were supposed to pass to a wife. He never learned what they were. It's time somebody did. The line went dead before Brooke could answer. She lowered the phone. The river ran below. The clip climbed. Somewhere behind the glass, a man stood over a closed book that would never be signed, learning in front of the whole city how it felt to be in the same room as the money at last. Jeju, Nia said. It was not a question. Jeju, Brooke said. She looked at the phone in her hand, then at the water. She's been waiting 2 years for one of us to be real. A pause. It was never going to be him. The video reached her before the words did. Brooke was still on the walkway over the Han when Nia's screen lit sideways in her hand. Not the clip of the pavilion, a new one. Softer light, warmer, a room she knew the way she knew her own pulse. Her living room. The Nogueira table. The chair by the window where she read board files at night. And Jae-hyun, standing at the center of it, in a suit she had never seen, with a woman on his arm. Turn it off, Nia said. She reached for the phone. Brooke moved it out of reach. The caption ran along the bottom in 2 languages. She read the English. A private ceremony announcement, dressed as a lifestyle post. Director Yoon and his bride, at home, her home. The camellias on the sill were the ones she'd carried up herself in October. The painting behind his shoulder was the one her mother's savings had almost not bought. Nari stood beside him in ice-gray silk, ring finally on the correct hand. The Ryu seal turned outward for the lens. Brooke watched it to the end. She watched it because looking away would have been the first thing she couldn't undo. He filmed it today, Nia said. After the pavilion, he went straight to your apartment and he filmed it there. I saw the chair. Brooke. I saw the chair, Nia. She handed the phone back. Her hand was steady. She made it steady the way her mother had taught her to make a ledger balance, by refusing to leave the desk until it did. The wind came up off the river. Somewhere behind them, inside the glass, the last of the shipping men were putting on their coats and leaving a merger that no longer existed. Brooke had killed one machine an hour ago. He had built another before the cameras cooled. He's fast, she said. He's cornered. Nia zipped the laptop into her bag. Cornered men move fast. It's the only tell they have left. They took the service stairs down. 2 flights. Concrete. The same kind she'd come down out of the glass house a lifetime ago. Brooke counted them without meaning to. At the bottom, a car idled that Nia had booked under a name that wasn't either of theirs. Her own phone buzzed against her hip. Not Jeju this time. Her bank. She read it in the back seat under the passing lights. The account tied to her personal card. Frozen, pending review. Then, a second line, arriving 3 seconds behind the first like a man who wanted her to feel the order of it. The Foundation's operating account, suspended, under investigation for irregular transfers. He filed against me, she said. Nia turned. Show me. Brooke tilted the screen. Nia's jaw worked once. He's calling the 400,000 yours. He's saying you moved it. He beat you to the complaint. She said it flat, no cushion. Your name signed the releases. He knew that from the start. He's not defending. He's accusing. I froze the cold chain accounts this morning. And tonight he froze everything with your name on it and made himself the man who caught it. Nia sat back. He turned your evidence into his story. Overnight. The car crossed the bridge. Below them, the tunnel where the pavilion sat glowed like a lantern that hadn't gotten the news yet. Brooke opened the foundation portal. It let her in. That was the cruelty of it. It still knew her. And then it showed her the 4 clinics grade to read only. Incheon. The pediatric floor. The elevator built in 4 months after she read one nurse's email. All of it a screen she could look at and not touch. She tried the vendor page anyway. A dialogue box, cold and courteous. Access restricted pending audit. Contact your administrator. She was the administrator. She had been the administrator for 6 years. Her thumb hovered. She put the phone face down on her knee. He can't hold it, Nia said. Not legally. Not for long. The freeze cuts both ways. It locks him out of the corridor too. But he doesn't need long. He needs the room between now and the wedding being real. Days. He just took your days. The wedding's already… Brooke stopped. She made herself say it plainly. He's calling it done. The video calls it done. The video calls it done. The paper won't be, not yet. There's a reason he wants it to look finished before it is. Nia pulled her own laptop back out, opened it on her knees in the moving car, screen lighting her glasses. That folder, the encrypted one, dated to the wedding. He's racing that date. I've been asking why. Then get into it. I'm trying. It's not on the clinic phone. It only lives on the burner account, and the burner's gone quiet since the pavilion. He's smart enough to have wiped the cloud login the second he saw his own face on a projector. Nia typed, stopped, typed. I've got the cache. I've got fragments. I don't have the room. The car pulled to the curb 3 streets from the building. Old habit. Nobody had told the driver to stop short. Nia had. Brooke looked up at the tower where the penthouse was. Her windows were dark. She wondered if that meant he'd left, or if it meant he was standing in the dark on purpose, the way he stood in a lot of rooms on purpose. I can't go up, she said. No. My clothes are up there. My mother's things. The releases, the originals, He knows all of it's up there. That's why you can't go up. Nia closed the laptop halfway. If you go up and he's there, you're a woman who broke in. He filed first. Tonight, in the eyes of a very slow system, the apartment is his crime scene and you're the suspect. Don't hand him the last photo he needs. The word sat between them. Photo. The apartment measured in centimeters. The garment bag on the bed. He had been building the picture of her absence for weeks, and now he had the absence itself, because he had made it too dangerous for her to be home. Brooke laughed once, short, without any humor in it. He didn't remove me. He got me to remove myself. Yes. That's cleaner than a divorce. That's what it was always for. A man came out of the tower's front door. Not Jae-hyun. Building security, in a coat that fit him wrong, checking the street. Nia said, low, down. And Brooke didn't move, because moving was what a guilty woman did, and she watched the man's eyes slide over the parked car, and off it, and away. He put your face out with the freeze, Nia said, once he'd gone back in. The board got a notice tonight, so did the clinic staff, so did the 2 donors whose numbers he had. Before the pavilion clip finishes going viral, half the people who fund you will have read that Brooke Adebayo is under investigation for moving money out of a children's foundation. That's not… I know it's not. It doesn't have to be true tonight. It has to be first. Nia's voice didn't rise. That was the thing about Nia. She never raised it, and it made every flat sentence land like a stone in still water. By the time the truth arrives with lawyers and dates and my beautiful clean file, the story's already in their heads. He's not fighting the facts, he's fighting the clock. And right now, he's winning the clock. Brooke's phone buzzed a 3rd time. She almost didn't look. An email. The subject line was her own foundation's name, and under it, a forwarded message from Dr. Han in Incheon. She opened it because it was Han, because he'd built a floor with her, because his name meant something that wasn't the machine. He was careful. He was always careful. He wrote that the hospital had received a notice, that he did not believe a word of it, That he was, however, being instructed by the board to pause the pediatric sign-off until the situation clarifies. He apologized. He apologized twice. The elevator would keep running. The floor would stay open, but her name had come off the paperwork this evening, and he could not put it back. She read it twice. She had read a lot of things twice in her life. She used to think reading a thing twice was how you kept from being wrong about it. Tonight it was just how long the pain took to finish arriving. They took the floor, she said. Nia didn't ask which floor. For now. Hans signed off on the elevator with me 2 days ago. I stood in that hallway. I thanked the nurse. For now, Brooke. But for now is a phrase that only helps the person saying it. Brooke set the phone down on the seat between them. Screen up, Hans' careful apology glowing, and she put both hands flat on her own knees and looked at the ceiling of the car and let the thing move through her. It moved. She let it. She'd told Nia once that she'd done her crying on a Thursday, in a car, at a red light, and that it was out of the system until she needed it. That had been true when she said it. It stopped being true somewhere between the chair in the video and the grayed-out floor in Incheon. Her eyes went hot. She let them. She did not make a sound, because sound was a thing you couldn't take back either. But the water came, and she let it come, and she counted, the way she counted everything, and she gave it the length of the block. Then she wiped her face with the back of her hand, once, and picked the phone back up. "Okay," she said. Nia was watching her. "Okay, what?" He took the days. He took the accounts. He took the floor, and the story, and the chair. Brooke turned Hans' email off with her thumb. "He can't take the woman he's using it all to replace. He needs me removed. So the one thing I can do that he hasn't planned for is not stay removed. You can't go up. Not up." Brooke looked out the window, past the tower, past the bridge, in a direction that had nothing to do with the city. Out. Nia went still. Jeju. His grandmother called me. On the walkway. She saw the pavilion and she called me, and she told me to come. Brooke found the last call in her log. The Jeju area code. The number she hadn't saved yet, and now would. He flinched when I said her name in that room. In front of everyone, the whole thing came apart, and the only moment his face actually moved was when I said Yoon Sol-hwa. That could be love, could be fear. It's not love, Brooke almost smiled. He measured his own apartment in centimeters. He doesn't have love, it's fear. She's the thing he's racing. The wedding has to be done before she decides I'm real. Those were his words. In the glass house, months ago. Done before she decides. She looked at Nia. He froze my money tonight so I'd stay in the city fighting for it. So I'd spend the days he took trying to get them back. He wants me at a bank, on a phone, filing appeals, while the paper dries in Jeju. So you don't fight for the money. I let it be frozen. It cuts him off from the corridor too. You said it yourself. Let it starve both of us. I don't need the account. I need the woman it belongs to. Brooke's jaw set. I need to be in the one room he's trying to keep me out of before he gets there. He can't be in two places. He's here, cleaning up the pavilion, running the clock in the city. He can't also be at his grandmother's door in Jeju making sure I never reach it. Nia was quiet for a moment. Then she opened the laptop again, all the way this time, and her fingers started moving with a different rhythm. Not the slow crack of a locked folder, but the fast, clean rattle of a woman booking a flight. First one out is 6:40, she said. Gimpo to Jeju. We'd have to go straight to the airport. No bags. You've got nothing to pack anyway. It's all up in a crime scene. She glanced up. You don't have to. The file's not done. I can't crack the wedding folder from a hotel any faster than I can from a plane, and I'm not letting you land on an island where his family owns the ground and stand at some old woman's gate alone. Nia turned the screen. 2 seats. Also, I want to be in the room when whatever she has turns out to be. He's terrified of it. I'd like to see it. He said she keeps things that pass to a wife when she decides the wife is real. Then let's go find out what a wife inherits, Nia said, in a family that launders through refrigerators. The car turned toward Gimpo without either of them telling it to. The driver, it turned out, had been listening. Brooke didn't mind. She was done with rooms where nobody heard her. She looked at the tower one last time as it slid out of the rear window. The dark windows, somewhere behind them, in her home, on her chair. He was probably already asleep, or pretending to be, the way he pretended a lot of restful things. She had spent 2 years learning the difference between his real sleep and his performed one. She would never have to use that skill again. It felt like setting down something heavy she'd been told her whole marriage was actually light. Her phone buzzed once more. She looked down, expecting the bank, expecting Han, expecting another door closing. It was him. One line, no greeting, the way he'd written the note on the marble weeks ago, back when he still bothered to lie inside the house. Come home. We'll fix your mistake quietly. J. Her mistake. Singular. As if the 400,000 had a signature that wasn't a fake. As if the seal on the shell company wasn't the same one on the finger of the woman he'd filmed in her living room. As if the mistake in the sentence were anything other than the fact that she had lived long enough to open the wrong coat pocket. She read it once, only once. She was done reading his things twice. She turned the phone to Nia so she'd have a witness to the date and time, then she typed nothing back, because a reply was a door, and she was finished handing him doors. She put the phone in the inside pocket of her bag, the one with the zipper, the pocket her mother had taught her was for the things you meant to keep. He wants me home, she said. He wants you where he can watch you not being at the airport. I know. Nia signed the second ticket. Then let's disappoint him somewhere he can't reach. They drove. The city thinned out around them, towers giving way to overpasses to the low flat approach roads that smelled of jet fuel and river. Brooke watched the mile markers and thought about the tira of paper at the very first festival, weeks and a whole life ago, the blank strip where you were supposed to write what you feared to lose. She'd left it empty. She'd told herself at the time it was because she wasn't afraid. She knew now it was because she hadn't yet been shown the list. The list had arrived tonight, item by item, the floor, the name, the money that fed the clinics, the chair, the painting, the camellias she'd carried up herself. He'd read the blank strip better than she had. He'd known exactly what she had to lose because he'd spent 2 years making an inventory of it, in centimeters, in a locked folder, in a bag on a bed. And still, there was one thing not on his list, because he'd never understood it was a thing at all. The old woman in Jeju had called. Her. Not him. Him she had left in the city with his frozen accounts and his fast wedding. Her? She had summoned across the water. He built a machine to make me disappear, Brooke said, mostly to the window. He did. He forgot the one person who can make things appear. Nia looked over. You think she has something? I think he spent his whole life being scared of a small old woman who lives on an island and grows camellias. Men like him aren't scared of nothing. Brooke's reflection floated over the passing lights, steady, the coke-dark eyes her mother had given her. I'm going to go find out what she is to him. And then I'm going to be it. The airport rose ahead, white and enormous, a place designed to move people away from where they were. Brooke had spent a marriage being moved. Tonight, for the first time, she was choosing the direction. The car stopped at departures. Nia was out first, laptop bag over her shoulder, already scanning the doors for the counter. Brooke sat 1 extra second in the back seat with her hand on the zipper pocket, feeling the shape of the phone through the leather, the last message from a man who thought he'd won because he'd taken everything a list could hold. Then she got out and the cold came off the runway, and she felt it this time, all of it, and she walked into the light of the terminal with nothing but a bag, a friend, and a name an old woman had spoken across the sea. The counter woman looked at Brooke's face longer than she looked at the passport. Brooke waited for it, the flicker of a person who had seen a viral clip, who half recognized a woman from a projector screen. It didn't come. The clip had her in wine silk under stage light. Here she was, a tired traveler in a wrinkled dress buying a dawn ticket she'd decided on an hour ago. Anonymity, it turned out, was the one thing he'd handed her by accident. She took it. They cleared security with the light, thin crowd of people who fly before the sun. Brooke's card was frozen. Nia paid for both without a word, and Brooke let her, and filed it as a debt she would settle in full, because settling debts in full was the difference between her mother and every man in this story. At the gate, Nia opened the laptop across 2 seats and went back to work on the folder. Brooke watched her hands. Talk to me, Brooke said. Give me something to hold that isn't the chair. Nia didn't look up. The fragments. From the cache, before he wiped the login, she turned the screen a few degrees. Lines of half-recovered text, some of it Korean, some of it a shipping shorthand of dates and box numbers. It's not one document. It's a list inside the wedding folder. Box IDs. Cold storage box IDs. Muryong. He kept an inventory of the warehouse in the same folder as his wedding. He kept it in the folder he protects most, Nia scrolled. Which tells me the wedding and the warehouse aren't two things to him. They're one thing with a date on it. She stopped on a line. There's a word that repeats, not a box number. A word. I can't get the whole thing, but the root is… She frowned. It's the word for a book, ledger, register, something written down and kept. A book of what? That's the part behind the lock. Nia sat back. But he's flying toward a date to make sure a book stays his, and an old woman on an island is the reason he's afraid. If those two things are the same book, Brooke, then you're not going to Jeju to be comforted. You're going to Jeju to be handed a weapon. The gate agent called the flight. They boarded with the early people, and Brooke took the window and looked out at the black apron and the little men in vests waving lit wands, and the plane pushed back, and the city she had lived and married and been erased in slid sideways and dropped away under the wing. She slept for none of it. She'd learned to perform sleep so well over 2 years that she found she'd lost the ability to actually do it. She sat with her eyes open over the dark water and did the thing her mother had taught her, the thing that was hers before Jae-hyun and would be hers after him. She arranged what she knew until it argued for itself. He had a book. He was afraid of his grandmother. His grandmother had things that passed to a wife when she decided the wife was real. He had spent months trying to become a widower on paper before the marriage he'd built could be questioned by the one person whose questions he couldn't survive. He hadn't just wanted Brooke gone, he'd wanted her gone. Before Seol-hwa could give her anything, which meant there was something to be given, which meant the fastest way to lose everything was exactly the thing he'd forgotten she could do, get to Jeju first. The water below broke into the lights of small boats, and then the darker mass of the island rising out of the sea, black volcanic shoulders under a sky just beginning to go gray at its edge. The plane banked. Brooke watched the coastline turn under her and thought, with a calm that surprised her, that she had never once in her life been to a place her husband's family came from, and that she was arriving at it for the first time as the person he most needed never to arrive. They landed in a wet gray dawn. The air on the jet bridge smelled of salt and something green and cold. No cameras, no board, no man with a badge sent by a slow system. Just an island, waking up, that did not know her name, and did not know his crimes, and did not care about a viral clip from a mainland tunnel. Nia had the address before they reached the taxi rank. Not a street number. An old woman's directions passed through Jae-hyun himself, months ago, in the glass house, when he'd told Brooke about the camellias his grandmother planted. A house on the southern coast road, above a cove, behind a wall of camellia trees that his grandmother had grown from cuttings older than him. The Camellia House. He'd said the name once, fondly, back when fondness was a costume he still wore for her. She grew them from cuttings, Brooke said in the taxi, watching stone walls and low tangerine groves go by in the rain. He told me. He was almost human when he told me. People are almost human about the thing they're about to betray, Nia said. It's how they say goodbye to it without noticing. The road climbed, the rain thinned to mist, and then the taxi slowed at a place where the stone wall gave way to a living one, a hedge of dark trees, glossy-leaved, and in the gray light, impossibly, flowers. Red, heavy. Camellias in bloom out of season. The way things bloom when someone has tended them for 50 years past the point where tending was reasonable. Behind the trees, a low house of dark wood and pale stone, a single light on in one window, smoke rising thin and straight from a chimney into the windless dawn. Brooke paid the driver with the last cash in Nia's wallet and stood at the gate in the mist with her one bag and her one friend and her mother's steadiness under her ribs. She had come here to find out what a small old woman was, to a man who measured his own apartment in centimeters and feared almost nothing on earth. The gate was not locked. That was the first thing. In a family that locked warehouses full of things that had to stay cold and quiet, the old woman's gate stood open to the sea road, as if she had never in her life been the one who needed protecting. Brooke put her hand on the wet wood and pushed. Behind her, across the water, in a dark penthouse, on a chair by a window, a man waited for a woman to come home and fix her mistake. She was already through his grandmother's gate. The door opened before Brooke's knuckles reached the wood. Seohwa stood in the frame, small and straight, a cane with a silver head in one hand. She looked at Brooke's face first, then at her boots, wet to the ankle, then past her, at Nia. "You came fast," Seohwa said. "He is still counting days in the city." "He froze my accounts," Brooke said. "Of course he did." The old woman stepped back to let them in. "That is the only clock he knows how to wind." Inside, the house was warm and low, a fire in a stone hearth. Camellias in a shallow bowl on the table, cut that morning, still beaded. Seohwa wore a hanbok the color of moss, dark thread of a flower worked into the collar, a black shawl over her shoulders. She moved to a chair by the fire and did not sit until both women were seated across from her. Nia set her bag by her feet. She had the parka still zipped, the laptop inside it. "You brought the one who reads numbers," Seohwa said, not a question. "She's the only reason I'm alive on paper," Brooke said. The old woman's mouth moved, almost a smile. Then she should hear this too. She reached beside the chair and lifted a lacquer box onto her knees. Old wood, black, a brass clasp gone green. She did not open it yet. Her hand rested on the lid, the way a person rests a hand on something asleep. "You wore his pin," Seohwa said. "In the picture from the glass tunnel, the camellia." "He put it in my hair," Brooke said. "He told me it was yours. He told me not to say it came from him." "It is mine." The old woman's eyes did not move off her. "It was my mother's. It passes to a wife when I decide the wife is real. He knew that, so he skipped me. He put it in your hair himself and told you to lie about who gave it, so the giving would look like mine without me ever giving it." Brooke sat still. "You understand what that is," Seohwa said. "A forgery," Nia said quietly. "Yes." The old woman opened the clasp. Inside the box, papers, brittle at the folds, and a single sheet newer than the rest. She did not hand them over. She lifted the newer sheet and held it toward the fire so the letterhead caught the light. "The Yoon Meridian Fund," she said. "My husband built it. Not the shipping, not the import. Those are coats you wear over a body. The Meridian is the body. Everything the family controls sits under it. The accounts, the land, the name that opens doors, the name that closes them." "And it has a rule," Brooke said. She had learned to hear a rule coming. "It has one rule." Seohwa set the sheet on her knee and smoothed it flat with 2 fingers. "My husband wrote it after his brother tried to take the fund with a marriage. He wrote it so it could never be taken that way again. Control does not pass to the eldest. It does not pass to the cleverest. It passes to the guardian wife, the one married into the house in good faith. And it stays with her unless the man who married her betrays her to bind himself to a rival house." The fire ticked. "Say that again," Nia said. She had gone very still. "If the husband turns on the guardian wife," Seohwa said, slow, "to make an alliance with a rival, the control does not go to him, it goes to her, the whole of it. Automatically. The pact was written to punish exactly the thing my grandson is doing. He built the trap fresh and walked into it thinking it was his own idea." Brooke did not move for a long moment. "I never signed anything called Meridian," she said. "You signed it at your wedding." The old woman lifted the older papers now, the brittle ones, and turned them so the last page faced Brooke. A signature at the bottom, Brooke's own hand, 2 years younger, the loops rounder. It was inside the marriage settlement. 40 pages of Korean and English. "He told you it was routine. You signed the guardian clause without knowing the word for it. He made you the guardian wife with his own pen, to make the marriage look complete to me. He needed me to believe you were real, so I would not interfere." "He made me the thing that beats him," Brooke said. "He made you the thing that beats him," Seohwa said. 2 years before he decided to betray you, and now he is betraying you, which means the trap has already sprung. He simply has not been shown the paper yet." Nia leaned forward. "Does it need a court? A trigger? Something has to fire it." It fires when the betrayal is proven and presented to the fund's holder. The old woman's eyes moved to Nia and stayed. I am the holder until control passes. It passes when I present the proof and name the successor. I have waited 50 years to name one. I will not name a Ryu. She said the name the way a person says a thing they have scraped off a shoe. You knew about Nari, Brooke said. I knew about the Ryu the way you know a smell in a house before you find what died. Seholhua folded the papers back into the box. They came to my grandson 3 years ago with a shipping fund and a woman. He thought he was using them. He was the coat. They wanted the Meridian, and he was the only door into it, and you were the only lock on that door. So they told him to open you and throw you out. Brooke's phone buzzed against her hip. She did not reach for it. There is more you do not have, the old woman said. You have the money. You have the divorce dated wrong. You do not have the thing that puts a badge on his wrist instead of a fine on his desk. She looked at Nia. You have been chasing a word. Nia's head came up. A ledger. A book. It's in the encrypted folder. The box is at Muryong. And a word that means book. The Black Salt Book, Seolhua said. The fire ticked again. It is the real ledger, the old woman said. Every load that came through the cold line for 11 years. Real weights, real buyers, the names the manifests lie about. My husband kept a second book to blackmail his own partners into staying honest. When he died, it went to the family safe. 3 years ago, it left the safe. I did not know where. I knew only that it was gone, and a book like that does not walk out for nothing. Jae-hyun took it, Brooke said. Jae-hyun took it to give to the Ryu as the price of the alliance. Seolhwa's hand closed on the cane. It is his dowry to them. The book, and you thrown out of the door, that is what the wedding buys. And a Ryu who holds the Black Salt Book does not need a Yoon anymore. Nia said it before Brooke did. They're going to discard him. After, the old woman said. After the wedding completes the pact in their eyes. After the book is in their hands and the guardian wife is gone. He thinks the wedding is his finish line. It is the moment he becomes disposable. He is the coat. You do not keep a coat in summer. Nia was already unzipping the parka. The laptop came out. Where is the book? Physically. Now. I do not know where he keeps it in the city. Seolhwa's eyes did not leave the screen as it woke. But I know how the man hides things. He hides them inside the thing they describe. He is not clever the way he believes. He is only cold. Nia's fingers stopped. She looked up at Brooke. The boxes, she said. The IDs in the folder. They weren't cargo IDs. They were cold storage cylinder numbers. She turned the screen so Brooke could see the list she'd pulled from the cache in the airport. Cryo-cylinders. Muryong runs a cryotherapy line as a front. Cosmetic cold liquid nitrogen tanks. The skincare cover. He didn't store the book in a safe. He stored it inside a cryotherapy cylinder in the one warehouse the whole city thinks is skincare. Frozen? Brooke said. In the thing his manifests call frozen. Cold and quiet, Nia said. That's what you told me it was for. Things that need to stay cold and quiet. Brooke stood. She walked to the window. Rain still coming, softer now. The camellia hedge dark and heavy with it. Behind her, she heard Nia's keys start, fast. The sound of a person who has found the seam. I can get the cylinder ID matched to a rack location, Nia said. The freeze on the accounts froze the vendor portal, but the warehouse inventory system is separate. It's Muryong's, not the Foundation's. It's still awake. If I can pull the rack map. Pull it, Seolhua said. Nia pulled it. 90 seconds of typing and a soft exhale. Rack 41. Cylinder marked as a decommissioned unit. No product. Flagged, do not fill 14 months ago. 14 months. That's when Seiho registered. That's when all of it started. He put it there the week he started building the exit. Brooke turned from the window. Can you get it to people with badges without going through him? Muryong's on a watch list already, Nia said. I don't have to convince anyone Muryong is dirty. I have to hand them the cylinder number and the reason it's flagged empty. That's a warrant in a sentence. She looked up. But the second it moves, he knows. The account freeze was quiet. A warrant on Muryong is not. Then it moves last, Brooke said. After I have the fund. Seolhwa's cane tapped once on the floor. Approval, or a period at the end of a sentence. The wedding is in the city, the old woman said. At the Yoon house, tomorrow. He moved it up. He always moves things up when he is afraid. He wants it done before the story from the glass pavilion cools. She looked at Brooke. He thinks I am here in Jeju, deciding whether you are real. He thinks I am the last problem, and I am 80 miles of water away from his party. You're coming, Brooke said. I have not left this island in 9 years, Seohwa said. She set the lacquer box on the table and stood, slow, the cane taking her weight. I will leave it tomorrow. I will bring the pact and the settlement, and I will present the proof and name the guardian wife in the one room where every mouth that matters is already open. Her eyes moved over Brooke, the wet boots, the trench, the set of her shoulders. You will not wear that. No, Brooke said. I won't. The Yoon house sat behind a wall on a hill above the river, older money than the glass pavilion. Camellias trained along the inner court, because Seohwa had planted them there before Jaehyun was born. Lanterns down the drive. Cars with drivers who kept the engines running. Inside, 300 chairs in white rows, an aisle of pale stone, a table at the head with 2 pens. Brooke came in through the front, not the press door, the front. She wore the dress the color of deep pine, cut close, gold at the heels and the ears, and she walked the aisle the way her mother had taught her to walk a room she owned, slow, admiring the curtains, finding the drawer, heads turned in the rows. A murmur ran up the aisle ahead of her, like water finding the low ground. At the head of the room, Jaehyun stood in a black suit, white shirt, a gray square folded at his chest. Nari beside him in iced silver, a white stole. The Ryu ring turned out to catch the light. A man Brooke had last seen abandoning a merger sat in the second row with the shipping lawyers, back again now that the party was small and private, and the woman was supposed to be finished. Jaehyun saw her. The mask held. He had practiced this one. You should not be here, he said, low, when she reached the front. The room heard it anyway. You embarrass yourself. Introduce me, Brooke said. He blinked. To your guests, she said. Introduce the wife. Nari stepped in, cool. You had your night at the pavilion. This is ours. She lifted her chin toward the rows, playing to them. She moved $400,000 through a children's charity, and now she interrupts a wedding. Someone should call. Read the message, Brooke said. She said it to Jaehyun. Quiet. The room leaned. The one on the second phone, she said. The night of the glass lanterns. 9:47. 6 words. I read them twice, so I'd never be wrong about them. She held his eyes. You want to know what I've had in my pocket for 3 weeks? It's those 6 words. Get her signature before the grandmother comes. The mask moved, a 1/4 inch at the jaw. That's what Nari sent you, Brooke said, while you had your hand on my back at a party you threw to make me feel chosen. Get her signature before the grandmother comes. You needed my name on the consolidation before your grandmother could hand me anything, because you already knew what she could hand me. Enough, Jaehyun said. You're right, said a voice from the back of the room. It is enough. Seohwa came up the aisle. She wore a hanbok of deep wine, a black flower worked into the silk, the jade brooch at her collar, the cane taking each step like a gavel. She had not been seen in the city in 9 years, and half the room had never seen her at all, and every one of them knew the walk. Chairs turned. The shipping man rose halfway out of his seat and did not seem to know why. Jaehyun's face did the one thing it had not done at the pavilion, had not done when Brooke exposed him in front of the cameras. It emptied. Halmioni, he said. Grandmother. The word came out of him small. Sit down, she told the shipping man, without looking at him. He sat. She reached the head of the room and stopped beside Brooke, the two of them facing the rows, and she set the lacquer box on the signing table between the 2 pens. She opened it. She did not raise her voice. My grandson married this woman 2 years ago, Seohwa said. He made her the guardian wife of the Yoon Meridian Fund with his own hand because he needed me to believe the marriage was real. She lifted the brittle settlement. The signature turned out. This is her name, on the guardian clause, in his handwriting beside it directing where she should sign. He built the lock and gave her the only key, and he was too impatient to read his own grandfather's rule to the end. She lifted the newer sheet. The rule, she said, and now her voice did carry, filling the stone room, is that if the husband betrays the guardian wife to bind himself to a rival house, Control of the entire fund passes to her, not to him, to her. She turned, slow, to the rows. You are all here to watch my grandson betray his wife to bind himself to the Ryu. You are witnesses. There will be no cleaner proof than the 300 of you. Nari moved, toward the box, toward the papers. Seol Hwa's cane came up an inch, and Nari stopped as if it were a blade. The Ryu wanted the meridian, the old woman said. They could not take it by force. My husband made sure of that. So they took it by wedding. They gave my grandson a fund and a woman, and told him the price was the guardian wife thrown out the door, and the black salt book carried out in his arms. Her eyes found Nari and held. You were never going to keep him. A house that holds the book does not need the coat that carried it. You know that. You have known it since the beginning. He is the only one in this room who did not. Jae-hyun turned his head toward Nari. Slow. The first true thing his face had done all night. That's not, he started. The book, Seol Hwa said over him, is in a cryotherapy cylinder at the Muryong warehouse. Rack 41. Flagged empty 14 months ago, the week he began building the door out. She let that sit. It is not there anymore. Nia stepped out from the side of the room, laptop closed under her arm, and said, Clear. It was collected this morning, with a warrant. Muryong's been on a watch list for 2 years. All they needed was a cylinder number and a reason it was flagged empty. I gave them both at 6 a.m. The shipping man was on his feet again. He was not the only one. Chairs scraped. 2 of the Ryu lawyers were already moving toward the doors, phones out and finding the doors held. The Foundation's cold chain accounts were frozen 3 weeks ago, Brooke said. She did not raise her voice either. She had learned the room from her mother-in-law in the last 30 seconds and she used it. Everyone here read that I moved $400,000. What you'll read tomorrow is that the accounts were frozen by me, that Seohae Cold Logistics is a Ryu shell, and that the money ran a route my name signed and never touched. She looked at Jae-hyun. You filed first so the city would call me a thief. The audit starts Monday. It runs both directions. It will find your name at the far end of every dollar, 4 rooms away, exactly where you put yourself to stay clean. 4 rooms is close enough for an auditor. It was always close enough. You have nothing, Jae-hyun said. I have everything, Seol Hwa said. She lifted the last page from the box. She turned it so the room could see it was blank at the bottom, waiting for a name, and she took up one of the 2 pens from the wedding table, the pen laid out for him to sign his marriage, and she wrote, in a hand that did not shake, the name of the guardian wife. Brooke Adebayo, the old woman said, holds the Yoon Meridian Fund. From this moment, the accounts, the land, the name. She capped the pen and set it down. I have waited 50 years to name a successor. I name one who came to a locked island through an unlocked gate, alone, with nothing, because she understood the door was open. She looked at her grandson for the last time as a man who owned anything. You measured her apartment, Seol Hwa said. You should have read your grandfather's book. Jae-hyun reached once for Brooke's back, the old gesture, the hand on the spine, the one that had steered her through 2 years of rooms. Brooke stepped forward before it landed, so that his hand closed on nothing, and she picked up the second pen, his pen, and she set it down on the far side of the table, out of his reach. No, she said. One word. The room heard it to the back wall. It came apart fast after that, the way a thing comes apart when the only rivet is pulled. The Ryu lawyers reached the front door and found 2 men there who were not caterers. Nari did not scream, did not weep. She looked at Jae-hyun with the flat, assessing eyes of a woman pricing a coat in summer, turned the ring off her finger with her thumb, and set it on the wedding table on her way past, because it had never been hers to keep, and she had always known it. She was gone before the cameras the building did have could find her face. Jae-hyun stood at the head of a room of 300 witnesses with a book in the hands of the state and a fund in his wife's name and an alliance dissolving through the doors, and he had no phone to turn face down, no glass to spin, no wife to steer. He said her name once, just her name. It landed the way the 6 words had landed on him. Twice heard, never mistaken. Brooke did not answer it. She turned to Nia. The pediatric floor. Han gets his sign-off back Monday, Nia said. Your name goes back on the paperwork the second the freeze lifts. The audit clears you. Not him. I built the file so it could only read one way. She almost smiled. You're going to be very rich and very cleared by the same document. The foundation keeps the clinics, Brooke said. All four. The Aurea Group stays. Nothing that's legal stops running for a single day. The elevator, the floor, the enfermera's email that started it. The auditor legalizes what's clean and freezes what isn't. And the isn't is all his. And the fund? Brooke looked at the old woman, who had lowered herself back into a chair at the head of the room, and sat now with her hands folded on the silver head of the cane, watching the house empty of everything her husband had feared and her grandson had served. The fund pays for the thing on the paper I left blank, Brooke said. Nia frowned. What paper? The night of the glass lanterns. A boy gave everyone a strip of paper and told us to write what we were afraid to lose. Brooke's hand went to her ear, to the gold there, an old habit her mother had left her. I left mine blank. I couldn't name it. I thought it was the marriage. She looked at the camellias trained along the inner wall, the ones the old woman had planted before any of them were born. It was the thing my mother built with a mop and a ledger, the thing that was only mine. He spent 2 years teaching me to be afraid of losing it, so I'd never notice I already had the deed. She crossed the room and stood in front of Seohwa, and did the thing she had not been able to do at any table in 2 years. She reached up and took the camellia pin out of the small box Nia had carried from the coat pocket of her own trench. She had brought it from the city, off the marble of her own sink, wrapped in tissue, and she held it out to the old woman on her open palm. This is yours, Brooke said. He put it in my hair and told me to lie about it. I won't wear a gift that came as a forgery. Seohwa looked at the pin a long moment. Then she closed Brooke's fingers back over it, with a hand cool and light as paper. A forgery is a real thing dressed in a lie, the old woman said. You have spent 3 weeks taking the lie off everything he touched. Take it off this too. It was always going to a real wife. I only had to wait for the one who came through the gate. She patted the closed hand once. Now it is given. By me. In front of witnesses. Wear it or don't. It is yours to decide, which is the whole of what it ever meant. Brooke closed her hand around it. Outside, the rain had stopped. The driver's engines idled down the hill in a line, taking away the men who had come to watch a wedding and were leaving a witness statement. Somewhere in the city, an auditor was opening a file that ran one direction. In Incheon, an elevator carried a nurse to a floor that would open Monday with the right name on the door. In a state evidence locker, a cold cylinder was thawing around a book that 11 years of manifests had lied about. Nia paid for the car that took them back down the hill, because Brooke's cards would not clear until Monday, and Brooke wrote it in the small internal ledger she kept for the woman who had answered the phone on a Thursday. Every one, to be paid in full. Jae-hyun called that night, and the night after. The number came up and Brooke read it once, the way she had read his last message once, and showed it to no one because there was no longer anyone who needed to witness it. She did not answer, not to gloat, not to grieve. There was simply nothing in the pocket for him anymore. She had read his 6 words twice, 3 weeks ago, at a party in a drained reservoir under a city that thought the two of them were the most beautiful thing in the tunnel. She had known by morning what to do with them. She had done it. She kept the pin. She did not go back to him. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever built something with your own hands, like Brooke built her clinic, only to watch the person beside you try to take the credit and the reward? Have you ever held a truth in a photograph or a hidden document, knowing that speaking it would start a war? And when betrayal finally revealed itself, did you choose to break or did you choose to rise? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about betrayal, truth, and karma, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.